A young woman examines a list of skills belonging to the boy before her. Monster attractor, cooking, and cheerful. She asks with surprise if he truly intends to part with a monster attractor skill, noting that it only seems to cause trouble for people. The boy simply affirms, yes. He then makes an astonishing offer, revealing his own newly acquired skill, trading LV1. He proposes to buy her monster attractor skill for 1 million. Stunned but overjoyed, the woman eagerly accepts, thanking him profusely as she agrees to the sale. With the terms agreed upon, the transaction commences. The boy kneels, taking the woman's hands in his as a brilliant light signifies the transfer. The negotiations are concluded. He is now the owner of the monster attractor skill. The transfer is complete. The woman, now holding a hefty sum, urges the boy to confirm the amount and suggests he get his skills appraised at the church. Freed from his troublesome ability, the boy turns to the gathered crowd with a wide, cheerful grin, announcing his intention to purchase any useless or bothersome skills they might have. He wastes no time. In the middle of a bustling market, the boy sets up a station under a large red banner that reads, "Buying unwanted skills." He calls out to the passers-by, encouraging them to approach with any inquiries. In this world, such transactions are possible because skills are fundamental to existence. They are blessings granted to all by the gods from the moment of birth, an everyday occurrence and an integral part of everyone's daily life. The evidence is everywhere. A burly man effortlessly carries a heavy sack, his high levels in strength, sturdiness, and health visible to all. Elsewhere, a father and son walk together, their own unique sets of skills, like willpower, psychology, and concealment, defining their potential. As the boy walks through town, he passes 2 women gossiping. One of them, his own sister, watches him go by. The other woman remarks on that child, then expresses relief that her own kid has useful skills like loud voice and swordsmanship, unlike the boy's seemingly useless ones. The sister remains silent, her expression unreadable. He continues on his way, carrying a simple wooden bucket. With only the trading LV1 skill to his name now, he pauses, staring at his own somber reflection in the water. His thoughts are interrupted by the women's voices carrying from afar. One identifies him as the guy with the useless skill, while the other remarks how awful it is to not have any useful skills, thankful her child was spared such a fate. From nearby well, another young boy points out how loud they are. The protagonist, having heard every word, can only mutter, "I can hear you." He faces his tormentors. 2 other boys corner him, mocking his collection of skills as ones only criminals would possess. They tell him to stay out of the village, calling him useless. One of the bullies, empowered by his strength skill, throws a punch, which the boy attempts to block. Defeated, he walks away alone, nursing his bruised cheek. He grits his teeth, acknowledging the futility of fighting against a strength skill. He arrives back at his quiet home on the edge of the village. As he reaches for the doorknob, he tries to reassure himself, thinking that no matter the skill, as long as it can be used, it's better than a useless one. He opens the door and calls out that he's home. His sister greets him warmly from her desk, welcoming her beloved little brother home. She is surrounded by books and tools, a testament to her vast knowledge. A list reveals her 10 skills, including appraisal, drawing, medicine, and fine arts, all at level 20. He notices her work and asks if she was drawing. She turns, a bright smile on her face, and shows him a portrait she just finished. It's a lovingly rendered drawing of the 2 of them together. When he remains quiet, she asks if he's not going to say anything. He quickly replies that it's good, just like always. His subdued praise doesn't fool her. Seeing his bruised face and downcast eyes, his sister's expression shifts to fury. She exclaims how cruel people could be to her brother. He looks away, quietly confirming that it's the truth, and admits that they called him her leftover scraps again. He continues, his voice filled with resignation. He points out that she has 10 incredible skills in the arts and sciences, and that everyone says it's a waste for someone so talented to stay in their small village. He contrasts this with his own situation, having just a single skill that isn't good for anything. His mind flashes back to the day of his appraisal. He remembers looking up at the appraiser, utterly bewildered. He had never heard of a skill called trading before and had no idea what it did or how it worked. The memory sharpens, focusing on the document in his hands. The appraisal results were stark and simple, confirming he had only a single skill, trading. In that moment at the appraisal office, an apple was placed before him. He stared at it, sweat beading on his brow, as the appraiser commanded him to sell the apple using his new trading skill. The boy was frozen with panic and confusion. He stood dejectedly before his parents, confessing that his skill had failed to work yet again. They were unsympathetic, retorting that even a rare skill is useless if its function is unknown. As his parents walked away, their disappointment was palpable. The father lamented that the boy didn't have talent like his sister, while the mother declared him a complete disappointment. The boy and his sister, standing nearby, overheard every word, their faces etched with shock and hurt. The cruel words struck him, making him feel utterly worthless. Unaware that they were still being overheard, his parents continued their conversation, with the mother suggesting they could use the money from their daughter's art to buy a house in the capital and leave the boy behind. At that, his sister stepped forward. She reminded her parents of the money saved from her drawings and firmly declared her intention to stay in the village with her little brother. The boy stared, stunned into silence, as his sister asked why she should live with them when there was no point in worrying about her useless brother. She then pulled him into a tight embrace, her expression softening as she told him that getting to live with her beloved little brother was more valuable than anything else. He could only blush, overwhelmed by her fierce devotion. His memory fades to the present. A year has passed since they began living together in their own house. Yet his single, mysterious skill has not activated even once. He flinches as his sister's voice cuts through his thoughts. Peeking around a corner, she gently advises him to try things out slowly and perhaps avoid methods that involve fighting. Following her advice, she presents him with a jar of ointment. She remarks how fortunate it is that she possesses the pharmaceutic skill at level 20, offering him her special creation. He stares at the jar, a mixture of gratitude and inadequacy swirling within him. He looks at his sister and admits his jealousy, half-jokingly asking her to give him just one of her skills. She smiles wistfully, replying that it would be nice if that were possible. Their moment is interrupted as she heads for the door, where an elderly, bandaged man waits. She confirms she is going to the village square to perform appraisals and will be there shortly. As she leaves, the boy watches from the doorway of their small home. He complains to his sister, his arms crossed in frustration. With puffed cheeks, he grumbles that people keep asking for her appraisals without offering anything in return, simply because she possesses the skill. Seeing his sad face, she pulls him into a gentle embrace, telling him not to worry and promising she will never abandon him. She reaffirms her belief that his skill has value, even if their parents and the other villagers curse him for being useless. He blushes, flustered by her affection, and asks her not to pat his head so much. Internally, he acknowledges that his kind-hearted sister is the only person who is truly on his side. She smiles brightly, explaining that she might be home late today as a relative of the mayor is visiting. She adds that as long as she has him, she doesn't need anything else. From the doorway, he waves and tells her to take care. He watches from the window as she departs, waving goodbye with a fond, slightly exasperated expression as he tells her to just hurry up and go. Turning back into the house, his gaze falls upon the cluttered room. He decides that he should probably clean up while she is away. While tidying, he picks up a framed drawing of the two of them. He muses to himself that cleaning is the one thing his sister is bad at. He holds the drawing carefully, a small smile forming on his face as he admires the artwork. It really is a good drawing, he thinks. Night falls, blanketing the small, isolated house on the hill under a sky full of stars. Inside, the boy has fallen asleep on the couch amidst his cleaning supplies. He stirs, groggily realizing he must have dozed off. Unseen by him, his sister has returned and watches him with a soft, affectionate gaze. Later that night, the young boy awakens. Seeing the darkness outside, he wonders if his sister has returned home yet. Concluding she hasn't, he decides to go and meet her, grabbing a lantern as he muses that she is, after all, a girl and shouldn't be out alone. As he prepares to leave, his sister is seen departing from the house. He steps outside into the quiet night, but the path leading from his secluded home is empty. A crescent moon hangs in the sky as a sudden feeling of unease washes over him, and a confused sound escapes his lips. From his vantage point on the hill, a horrifying scene unfolds below. The entire town is engulfed in a raging inferno. A low, ominous rumble echoes as smoke and embers billow into the night sky, blotting out the stars. His eyes widen in utter shock and disbelief. He stands frozen, the reflection of the distant flames dancing in his pupils as he stares at the widespread destruction. The paralysis shatters as a single, desperate thought cuts through the horror. His sister. He cries out her name, stumbling forward into a frantic run towards the burning town, his mind reeling with the question of why this is happening. Under the cloak of night, a village is engulfed in flames. Bodies lie strewn across the dirt path, leading to a lone, silhouetted figure standing before the inferno. The boy, having stumbled and fallen amidst the carnage, looks up in dawning horror. He recognizes the lifeless forms of his own parents among the dead. He scrambles backward, gasping in disbelief. His gaze sweeps across the ghastly scene, taking in the faces of other children from the village, now still and silent. The sheer scale of the massacre is overwhelming. He covers his mouth, a wave of nausea washing over him. Through the shock, a single, desperate thought pierces through. He must find his sister. He questions who could possibly commit such an atrocity. As panic begins to set in, he recalls his sister mentioning something about a relative of the mayor. His eyes fix on a grand mansion looming on a nearby hill. He realizes with certainty that it must be the mayor's house. He sprints toward the estate, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Reaching the large front door, he gives it a push and is startled to find it unlocked. He steps cautiously into the foyer, only to be confronted by the same horrific sight. The grand entrance hall has been turned into a slaughterhouse, with bodies and blood desecrating the opulent interior. The scene is utterly awful. His eyes travel up the grand staircase, where he sees his sister standing over yet another body. He hears a man's voice cry out, pleading for her to stop. He claps his hands over his ears, his mind reeling in confusion. He recognizes the voice as the mayor's. A sliver of desperate hope emerges. If the mayor is alive, maybe he knows where his sister is. He screams his sister's name, his voice cracking with anguish. He looks up the stairs to where she stands, a silent figure presiding over the carnage. Kneeling amidst the carnage, the boy forces himself not to look down at the bodies. His mind fixates on a single, desperate thought. As long as his sister is alive, nothing else matters. He would endure the curses of his parents and the villagers, even with his single, useless skill, just for her. In a desperate plea, he calls out towards the mansion's interior, declaring that he doesn't care about any of it. If it's the village she wants, she can have it. His offer is met with a grim reality. He realizes with a start that he can't offer a village that's already destroyed. His head whips around as another body is flung through the air, landing with a sickening thud nearby. Standing there is his sister, her arms outstretched in a welcoming gesture. Amidst the splattered blood and darkness, she greets him with a serene smile, calling him her beloved little brother. He stumbles back, utterly bewildered by the scene. He demands to know what's going on, asking her why everyone is dead. She explains calmly that she miscalculated. It seems the mayor's relative possessed a high-level appraisal skill and discovered her secret, a powerful ability called plundering. The boy can only stare, dumbfounded by her words. Leaning in close, she continues her confession. She had been hiding her power the whole time using concealment and acting skills, but casually dismisses the discovery, saying it was about time anyway. Her brother stammers, struggling to comprehend the words plundering and hiding. She steps back, gesturing towards the pile of corpses on the stairs. She announces that she has already plundered all the villager skills that she learned about through her own appraisal. Having wrapped everything up, she sees no point in staying any longer. With a disturbingly cheerful expression, sticking her tongue out playfully, she concludes her explanation with a simple, horrifying statement. So, she ended up killing every single one of the villagers. The confession shatters his world. He recoils in terror, stammering that it must be a lie. He can't reconcile the monster before him with the kind-hearted sister he knew, and his mind floods with fear as he asks what she is saying. He recoils in terror, clutching the staircase railing as his sister laughs. She tells him not to worry, revealing that her psychology skill let her see he expected her to kill him right then and there. She then amends her statement with a chilling clarification. She won't kill him yet. The reason, she explains, is that his skill is the only one she is incapable of plundering. He stammers, questioning what she means. As the memory of her leaping over the fallen villagers flashes through his mind, she simply smiles, pleased by his confusion. Her smile widens as she praises him for asking a very good question, just as she'd expect from her little brother. Holding out a book, she offers to teach him some valuable information about skills. She begins her lesson, explaining that while her plundering skill is rare, something only one person can have at a time, his trading skill is an even rarer, only skill. It is a power so unique that it will never appear again in the past, present, or future. She contrasts this with the common skills she took from the villagers, such as loud voice, detection, and strength. Standing on a balcony overlooking the now silent village, she realizes with a hint of disdain that he doesn't even know how to use his own skill or what its purpose is. She scoffs at the very concept of an only skill. Leaning in close, she reveals her intentions. She will travel the world to raise the level of her plundering skill because, at its current level, it's not powerful enough to take an only skill. But the next time they meet, she promises she will be able to steal his. With a final, chilling promise, she leaps away, using a combination of skills like leap, swiftness, and wind magic to vanish into the distance. She declares that she will return to plunder his skill and kill him, telling him to hone it until that day. He cries out for his sister to wait, the terrible truth crashing down on him. He is left standing alone, the wind rustling the leaves around him. He stares down at his hands, his mind racing, wondering what power she just displayed and how she could possibly know so much about his own skill. His hand trembles as he reaches for the doorknob of his home. He tries to cling to denial, thinking that if he just goes inside, his kind sister will surely be there. He repeats to himself that it must all be a lie, but the hope crumbles into a devastating realization. The person who just left was not his sister. He retreated into his room, the weight of his sister's words pressing down on him. As she departed, leaving the door ajar, his gaze fell upon a cherished photograph of them together, a single, agonizing question echoing in his mind. Why? The question hung unanswered as his mind replayed her threat. Why would you say that you're going to kill me? He choked out, tears and mucus streaming down his face in utter despair. His thoughts fixated on the image of happier times, a portrait of him and his smiling sister. Sister, why? He pleaded to the memory. He clutched a small locket, the metal cool against his trembling fingers. Inside, the same memory was preserved, a constant, painful reminder of the bond he thought they shared. Sometime later, sitting alone outside, he was startled by a voice. A young boy approached, peering curiously at the locket. What's that you're looking at? The boy asked. Your girlfriend? The protagonist denied it, clarifying that it was his sister, his family. The boy's innocent questions faded into the background as the protagonist's mind drifted back to the impossible reality of the situation. He still couldn't bring himself to believe it. He apologized absently, lost in his own internal monologue. He questioned why his sister, who had always been so kind and blessed with many skills, would desire more to the point of killing, and why she had hidden it all from him. Despite everything, he wanted to believe she had a reason for her actions. Looking up at the sky, a new determination hardened his expression. He wanted to see her again, to understand her, even if their next meeting resulted in his death. He realized that to meet his sister, he had to follow her advice. He had to polish his trading skill. With his path now clear, he decided it was time to get going. His resolve led him to a large, multi-story building in town. Looks like this is the right place, he thought, approaching the entrance and announcing his presence with a simple hello. Stepping forward with a newfound, confident smile, he declared his purpose. The skill collector at your service, he announced. He offered to purchase any skills that people had no use for, any that were purely bothersome. Those useless skills. His own trading LV. One skill glowed, ready for business. He stood before a large, well-kept building as a voice from within called out, confirming they'd been expecting him and inviting him inside. As he prepared to enter, he reflected on the path ahead. This was the story of him and his sister, whose lives had been transformed by skills, but it was also destined to become the tale of many other people, all troubled by the very skills they possessed. In the bustling town square, the young collector addresses a grateful crowd. He reassures them not to worry, stating he'd be happy to continue his collector service, buying any unneeded skills they might have. It makes no difference to him whether the skills are useless or even harmful. His work done for the day, he reflects with a sigh of relief. His haul was a total of 12 skills. He sits for a moment, looking out at the peaceful new city he helped establish. As children play outside, he realizes he has grown quite accustomed to this line of work. His thoughts drift back to when his older sister first taught him how to use his trading skill. Ever since that day, he has made his living by buying and selling skills through his collector service. He still has no clue as to his sister's whereabouts, though he remembers her words, telling him to polish his skill until they could meet again. His reverie is broken by a sudden question. A voice asks if he is the one who runs the collector service. Startled, the boy turns to find an elderly, bandaged man standing before him. The man states that he would like to ask him something in private. The sage leads him away to an impressive, multi-story manor. Inside, seated across from the man he recognizes as the elder sage, the boy expresses his honor at being sought out. He cautiously asks if the sage is truly fine with him buying all of his skills. The elder sage confirms it with a simple, of course. He then makes his stunning request. He wants the boy to buy all of his skills, a collection of powerful, high-level abilities like eidetic memory and appraisal, with the sole exception of the skill memory. The boy marvels at the sheer number of valuable skills the sage possesses. He explains that he is able to perceive them because he bought an appraisal skill himself long ago. His mind races as he considers the sage's proposition. He considers the elder sage's offer. While he has enough money on hand, the deal seems far too advantageous. He decides to purchase all the skills for 100,000, but first asks the sage for his reasoning. The sage confirms that all the skills are at level 20, a level so high that possessing even one is a significant feat. In response, the sage begins to explain. He has reached an advanced age, having spent his entire life pursuing knowledge, which he believed was a natural duty for someone with his particular skills. He continues, revealing that as the years passed, he began to question if that path was truly enough. He decided he wanted to try starting over as an adventurer, casting his old self aside completely. The collector realizes the sage wants to start a new life after retiring, and is using his service to facilitate it. The sage then reveals a surprising awareness, stating he has heard the collector also sells skills. He asks if getting rid of his own abilities will free up his skill slots. The collector is visibly surprised that the old man knows about such a specific mechanic. The collector asks if the sage is looking to acquire many new skills, and the sage confirms he wants what is necessary to become an adventurer. It is a known fact that the number of skills one can have is limited by the 2 to 5 skill slots they are born with, meaning money alone cannot grant a person every skill they desire. To that end, the sage specifies the skills he wishes to purchase: high-level concealment and tailing, along with swordsmanship, physical ability, brute force, and recovery. The collector confirms that he has the requested skills available and that the sage's price is sufficient. With a flash of light, the deal is sealed. The sage's powerful knowledge skills transfer to the collector, while the new adventurer skills are transferred to the sage. Just as the transaction concludes, the sage's grandson bursts in, asking if their talk is finished. He excitedly announces that he is going on his first adventure the next day, proudly showing off his own set of starting skills. The boy explains that the main reason he wants to be an adventurer is because of the picture books his grandfather read to him every night. Hearing this, the sage is overcome with regret. The boy, oblivious, simply calls his grandfather a worrywart for being concerned about the dangers of the profession. The sage's expression hardens into a stern glare. He declares that if the boy chooses this path despite his opposition, he will not be allowed to return to the house ever again. The collector and the grandson are both stunned into silence by the harsh ultimatum. He tearfully but brightly thanks his grandfather for everything, even declaring his love, while the elder sage gruffly tells him to stop. The boy then turns to the collector, apologizing for the family's commotion. The collector observes them, concluding that despite the sage's harsh words, they seem to be a close and kind family. As the collector turns to leave, the elder sage calls out to him. He asks the boy what he thought of the skills he had just seen. He admits he was caught looking, apologizing, and explaining it as an occupational hazard. He then offers his professional opinion. The skills are outstanding and perfectly suited for an adventurer. The sage listens with a grim expression, voicing his hope that his grandson doesn't become overly reliant on his skills and act carelessly. The collector quietly takes in the old man's concern. Walking away from the residence, the collector reflects on the transaction. It was a heavy expense, but he gained a number of skills in return. Still, a sense of unease lingers. He continues on his way, lost in thought. While he is grateful for the high-level concealment and tailing skills, he can't understand why the elder sage, who seemed happy, would give up his adventurer skills in the first place. His mind races, analyzing the implications. Concealment and tailing aren't skills for adventurers. They're suited for thieves. It would be strange for someone blessed with such abilities to become a criminal. A sudden realization dawns on him. The thought of those blessed with skills brings forth a memory of his sister. He concludes with a somber thought. He truly knows nothing about people like them. Meanwhile, at the edge of a forest, the elder sage's grandson stands with a newly formed party. He admits to being nervous about their first expedition, but his eyes light up as he spots their objective, a monster egg for a collection job. As he reached for the monster eggs in the nest, a large bird-like creature with a horned beak swooped down to attack. "Watch out!" his armored companion yelled, rushing forward with his sword to protect him. The swift intervention saved him. The young adventurer thanked his friend, relieved that their party had completed the job without incident. They celebrated, unaware of a distant figure observing them from the trees. Despite their success, a strange feeling prickled at the back of his neck. He glanced over his shoulder, sensing they had been watched, but ultimately dismissed it as just his imagination. His feeling, however, was not imagined. Hidden amongst the dense foliage, the collector watched the young adventurers depart, letting out a quiet sigh of relief. His observation complete, he turned and walked away, his footsteps rustling softly in the grass as he departed. Moments later, he appeared before the elder sage. "How did your grandchild do, old man?" he asked. The sage started, shocked by the collector's sudden appearance and the question, which implied knowledge of the quest and the very skills the sage had sold. He met the sage's stunned gaze with a calm smile. "I'd be troubled if the skills I sold were abused," he explained. The sage, now visibly unnerved, could only stammer, "Why are you?" The collector's expression turned serious. "I use the skills I sell," he stated, revealing he had sold 7 levels to the sage, leaving him with 23 levels of concealment and tailing. The sage stood in disbelief, realizing not only that the boy could partially transfer skill levels, but that his own senses had been completely fooled. The young boy reflects on his unique ability, a skill called management currently at level 10. He explains its function to the elder sage, detailing how it allows him to store skills outside of his standard slots, carry more than would normally fit, and even adjust the levels of the skills he has collected. The sage processes this information, acknowledging the skill's utility before questioning the boy's intention to keep following him. Internally, the old man resolves to continue as long as his own skill-enhanced body can endure. Surprised by this dedication, the boy asks why the sage would go to such lengths, calling it overprotective. Looking toward the horizon, the sage quietly declares his resolve to watch over the boy every single day. He then reveals his motivation, stating that this is his atonement to his family. The sage's mind drifts back several decades, to a time when he was consumed by his own skills, his consideration for his family all but forgotten. In the past, the sage was a younger man, a prodigy whose intellect was bolstered by a host of powerful skills, all at their peak: eidetic memory, speed reading, calculation, comprehension, erudition, appraisal, teaching, and memory. This vast knowledge was not enough. Surrounded by books, his younger self declared his desire for even more, believing he was worthy of possessing it all. He turned and asked if these were all the books available. His question unanswered, he stood in a doorway, gazing out at the sleeping city under a starry sky. Upon returning home, he was met with warm greetings from his wife and young son, but he walked past them with a cold, distant expression. He explains to the boy that for many years, he had no interest in the family that was created merely for appearances. His thirst for knowledge had completely consumed him. He listened as the elder sage continued his tragic tale, the memory unfolding before him. It began with the sage's daughter, vibrant and full of life, rushing to her father to announce she was getting married and would soon have a child. But this news did not sway him from his path. The sage recounted how he had already read every book in his own country and, setting off alone, began a journey to the neighboring lands. He admitted that in his obsessive quest, he didn't care about his wife or his daughter's growing family. His world became an endless expanse of libraries, with towering shelves filled with countless volumes. Fueled by his skills, he consumed them all. Upon finishing the last book in one collection, his only thought was to find the next. His blessing had become a relentless compulsion. Amidst stacks of books and unread letters addressed to father, a moment of clarity struck. He questioned the purpose of his vast knowledge, wondering what would happen once his thirst was finally satisfied. He then came to a stark realization. This pursuit was not for the sake of someone precious. It was a purely selfish endeavor. This thought spurred him into action. A sudden, desperate need to return to his country, to go home, seized him. But upon his return, he was met not by a welcoming embrace, but by the cold, weary gaze of his daughter. Her face was etched with hardship as she trembled with resentment, asking why. Why'd he only come back now? She turned away, delivering the devastating news. Her mother and her husband had died from an epidemic. With a bitter tone, she added that he probably didn't care. All that was left, she explained, was herself and the child that was born. The boy, witnessing this memory, could only stare in stunned silence. The full weight of his failure crashed down upon the sage. In the memory, he collapsed to his knees, bowing his head to the ground as he cried out an apology. His daughter simply walked away, leaving him to his regret as the young protagonist watched the painful scene conclude. As he finished his story, his daughter's face crumpled with sorrow. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she lamented what a fool of a father he had been. With what little time she had left, she gave him his path to atonement, to be there for his grandchild. Her words conjure a memory of the boy, his small hand reaching out, calling for his grandpa. In that memory, she had begged the sage to protect him. Back in the present, the sage confesses to the young collector that even this is not enough for atonement. His daughter passed away, and the regret for his lost family will never fade. He recalls a happier time, a vow made to dedicate everything to his family from that point on. Reading to his grandchild while his daughter watched, a fleeting moment of peace. He explains to the collector that even selling off the skills he was blessed with is a small price. The only skill he truly needs, the one that allows him to remember the faces of his family and their time together, is memory. His words resonate with the collector, who is reminded of his own precious memories, reading a book alongside his sister. He understands completely. Those are things one would never want to forget. He turns back to the sage, a thoughtful expression on his face. He reveals that he has a rather special skill he's been saving, and, noting that the sage has a spare skill slot, suggests that if the sage were by it, he might find what he's looking for. He elaborates on the offer, a skill that would allow the sage to watch over his grandchild until the end of his life. However, the price is steep. The skill is unique, sold at level 50, and would require the sage to give up all of his wealth. The sage is visibly stunned by the cost. The collector looks at the old man with a knowing smile, confident in the outcome. He states that the sage already knows his own answer. And with that, the deal is sealed. The transaction complete, the scene shifts to a large, multi-story building in a town, its windows dark. A group of young adventurers discusses a new member. The boy with the bow tie confirms that someone is eager to join their party, prompting a question from his bespectacled companion. Nearby, the collector sits on a bench reading a paper, musing to himself that for adventurers, there's strength in numbers. As they speak, the boy with the bow tie spots a figure approaching in the distance. "Ah, look, here he comes," he exclaims, pointing towards a newcomer. The collector also turns his head to see who has arrived. The newcomer, a young man clad in armor with a sword strapped to his back, formally apologizes for keeping them waiting. He introduces himself as Liu, assuring the group that he won't cause any trouble. The boy with the bow tie greets Liu with a wide, cheerful smile, saying it's nice to meet him. He then comments on Liu's formal speech, remarking that he sounds old, just like his grandpa, which causes the newcomer to flinch slightly. While the others welcome their new companion, the collector looks back at his paper, a realization dawning on him. He reads about a rare elven skill called Youthful Mask, which, at level 50, can make the user appear 50 years younger. He understands that the elder sage hasn't truly regained his youth. Only his appearance has changed. The young man Liu is the sage in disguise. He looks up, thinking that since the sage found the right skill, it seems he succeeded in joining the party. Recalling the old man's deeply personal story and his wish to be near his grandchild, the collector feels a sense of satisfaction, thinking, "I'm happy for him." The young adventurers, oblivious to Liu's true identity, share in this happiness. The boy with the bow tie claps a friendly hand on the disguised sage's shoulder, welcoming him into their fold. His observation complete, the collector walks away through a crowded street, making a mental note to restock on the Youthful Mask skill. Lost in thought, he collides with a young woman, who lets out a small cry of surprise. He turns abruptly as the woman stumbles and falls to the ground, spilling a basket of white flowers across the cobblestones. "Are you all right?" he asks, his expression filled with concern. From the ground, the woman looks up at him. It is his sister, now with a small scrape on her cheek. After a slight cough, she murmurs an apology and thanks him, her face a mask of neutrality. She coughs weakly, her eyes falling upon the scattered flowers. "The flowers," she murmurs, realizing she still needs to sell them. Her brother looks down, telling her not to worry and remarking that things always seem to go this way. In response, she looks up at him, confused. "But," she starts to protest, but he calmly insists that the flowers are still perfectly fine to sell. A warm smile spreads across his face as he looks at his sister. He then makes an offer, stating that he would like to purchase all of the flowers from her. The offer leaves her utterly speechless. Her eyes widen in disbelief, her mouth slightly agape as she stares at him, completely taken aback by his generosity. On a city street, a young boy with a headband approaches a girl selling flowers. He startles her by declaring his intent to purchase all of them. The girl, overjoyed, thanks him profusely and offers to wrap the flowers for him, an offer he readily accepts. As she gathers the bouquet, he perceives her status. She is afflicted with a dreadful combination of skills: level 5 bad luck, level 2 sickness, and level 2 weak constitution. He reflects that while he has seen many skills in his business, such a nasty combination is rare. He tells her he's glad, which seems to startle her. Internally, he muses that even purely negative skills can find unexpected uses, and that he would like to stock these for his collector service. The girl, holding the flowers with a smudge of dirt on her cheek, beams with happiness. She explains that now her little brother and sister can eat their fill. The boy's expression softens as he asks if she, their big sister, has been getting any sleep. Her situation reminds him of his own sister. He recalls finding her awake late one night, drawing pictures to sell. When he expressed his wish to help make ends meet, she had simply told him not to worry. The memory of their shared troubles surfaces, pulled back to the present. He holds out a thick wad of cash to the flower girl. He tells her that he made a bit of money today and wants to share his good fortune, urging her to accept it. As he places the money in her hand, a brilliant light flashes between them, sealing their transaction. The girl is startled by the light, but he casually dismisses it as a simple good luck charm. Overwhelmed by his generosity, she thanks him profusely. She runs off, shouting her thanks and looking forward to future business as a good luck LV.1 skill transfers to her. The boy examines his own hand. The activation conditions for his trading skill are revealed: the consent of the other party and monetary compensation. He has successfully acquired her bad luck LV.5, sickness LV.2, and weak constitution LV.2. The girl, surprised by the large sum of money, exclaims that it's more than half of what he received. The boy reflects internally that he considered it a cheap price for 3 skills. To make the deal fair, he sold her his good luck skill, hoping she'll like the trade. He contemplates his next move, thinking about a gift for his friend. An idea strikes him: flowers. He reasons that even if they're a bit dirty, they still have a nice smell. Clutching the bouquet he just bought, he walks away with a new plan. He stands at a market stall, his basket already partially filled. As a single leaf drifts down through the air, he contemplates his purchases. His thoughts turn to practicalities. He decides some daily necessities would be good, and with the weather getting colder, it would be best to have medicine on hand. He quietly wonders what else he can bring for his friend. Carrying several large bags, he begins to worry that he might have bought too much. Just then, a cheerful voice calls out, recognizing him as the collector. He turns to see a woman he remembers from when he first came to town. She thanks him profusely, explaining that because he bought her monster attraction skill, the monsters have stopped appearing. This has allowed her to finally open the diner she always dreamed of and even leave town to stock up on ingredients. The woman gestures proudly towards a large, handsome building, confirming with a cheerful yep that her diner will be on the first floor of her inn. He tells her that's great news, happy that he could help. Overjoyed, she insists it's all because of him and thanks him again, before mentioning that she is now looking for staff. Her eyes sparkle as she presents him with a flyer, enthusiastically suggesting he take the job and telling him he'd look great in an apron. The collector, looking slightly uncomfortable, politely declines, explaining that his hands are full with his collector service. Understanding, she tells him not to worry and to give the job flyer to someone else who might be looking. He takes the flyer, contemplating the troublesome new task. As he walks on, he's approached by the young flower seller. She asks if he'd like some flowers. An idea about the part-time job flashes in his mind, but he immediately dismisses it, thinking that the friend he is about to meet isn't suited for places with people. Before he can say more, a group of children excitedly surrounds the flower girl, all wanting to buy her wares. The collector has a sudden realization. He was the one given an errand, but she is the one with the money now. Seeing her success, he turns and walks away. He watches as the flower girl interacts with 2 young boys, praising them for their errand and reminding them to carry their flowers carefully. She then turns, her eyes lighting up with recognition as she spots him. She asks if he is the buyer from the other day, just as another customer approaches to request a bouquet. With a bright, genuine smile, she confirms that of course she remembers him, adding that she's happy he was pleased with the flowers he bought. He's taken aback by her memory. As he watches her, he reflects on how conscientious she is, thinking to himself that someone like her is perfectly suited to dealing with customers. He hesitates for a moment, lost in thought, before an idea suddenly strikes him. Pulling out the flyer he acquired earlier, he offers it to her, explaining that he happened to get it and that she is free to turn it down. The girl's eyes widen in surprise as she reads the paper, exclaiming, "A part-time job?" Her initial shock gives way to pure excitement. She declares that she is, in fact, looking for a job right now and would absolutely love to take it. Her enthusiasm catches him completely by surprise. He can only stare, realizing the profound impact of his actions. He remembers buying her skills, bad luck, sickness, and weak constitution. The girl happily explains that her horrible asthma has cleared up recently. She hasn't been falling or bumping into things nearly as much, though she doesn't understand why. Unseen by them, Her status now shows a new skill. Good luck LV.1. He decides it's time to depart, telling her he needs to go before sunset to visit a friend. Surprised he's leaving so soon, she gathers her courage. Acknowledging that he bought flowers and now found her a job, she hesitantly asks for his name. With a calm smile, he introduces himself. He is not a local, but a traveling peddler. He is called the Collector. As he walks away into the bustling town square, the flower girl clutches the job flyer to her chest. She quietly repeats his title, Collector, and wonders aloud if they will ever meet again. Far away, in a remote region, snow blankets a vast mountain range. The landscape is quiet, with snow resting heavily on the bare branches of the trees. Making his way along a difficult trail, the Collector catches his breath, noting that even with his skill-enhanced products, the mountain path is still a challenge. As he approaches a log cabin, a voice rings out, greeting him after a long time. The call comes from a powerfully built man with long, dark hair, who pauses his wood chopping to acknowledge the visitor. He greets the Collector with a familiar apology, to which the boy replies that he has bought many things in town as requested. The man's attention then shifts to the flowers the Collector is holding. He questions if it's a new hobby, then teasingly asks if a woman gave them to him. Flustered, the Collector clarifies that it was a girl, prompting the man to jokingly warn him not to get into trouble. Setting the teasing aside, the man asks if the Collector can provide the usual service. With a confident smile, the boy agrees, stating that he thinks it might go well this time and that the flowers were just an incidental bonus to his visit. He reflects on their relationship. This man is not just a longtime regular, but one of his very few friends. A friend who, despite his strength, is called unskilled by the world. The Collector approaches a rustic wooden hut, identifying the large, muscular man standing outside as a regular of his. The man, known as unskilled, asks if the boy has come for the usual reason, and the Collector confirms that he has. Unskilled gestures encouragingly, telling the boy to go ahead and use his skill. With a determined look, the Collector agrees. As the boy prepares, Unskilled focuses his own power, activating his appraisal skill. The appraisal yields no results. The Collector's face falls, and he apologizes. A young girl with dark hair, sitting nearby, questions why he is sorry for something he can't control, noting that his dejected expression says everything. Unskilled, seemingly unfazed, mentions he has taken up carving figures to pass the time. He offers one of his creations to the boy. He presents a small wooden bear, reminding the Collector that, as he'd mentioned before, it said one unskilled person is born for every 1,000. The girl's guardian then asks the boy if he won't stop his attempts already. The Collector looks downcast, explaining that because the girl has no skill slots, he can't sell her any skills, and she'll never awaken any. He wonders aloud if his efforts are complete waste. His expression suddenly hardens with resolve. He quietly vows that he won't give up on awakening his own skill. The girl watches him, a flicker of recognition in her eyes. She realizes his passion is still burning, and that he has the same intense gaze he had on the day they first met. Her thought is cut short as the Collector, filled with renewed purpose, turns and shouts to the surrounding area, loudly proclaiming that he will buy any unneeded skills. He is taken aback when the young, unskilled girl approaches him. She asks if he plans to discard the skills he collects, and if so, whether she can have them. He stammers, surprised, noting that it's not often someone shows interest in his collection. As he looks down at her, a voice from the crowd sneers, "Hey, skillless." The Collector realizes with a jolt that she has no skill slots whatsoever. The verbal assault continues as another townsperson shouts at him to shut up, calling him inept and demanding he stay out of town. The Collector's face twists in shock and anger. In response, the girl fiercely defends him. She yells that she simply hasn't awakened her skills yet, insisting that skills can be obtained through hard work. The crowd mocks her, claiming it's impossible and that her own parents abandoned her for being inept. Undeterred, she declares she will train in the mountains to prove it. Her defiant promise hangs in the air. "Just watch. I'll definitely get a skill." The Collector is visibly stunned by her unwavering conviction, especially after she dismissed him just moments before. He turns and walks away, her words echoing in his mind. He contemplates her plan to seclude herself in the mountains to train, thinking to himself that there's no way she could possibly succeed. This thought triggers a vivid memory of his own past. He sees himself as a boy, training relentlessly under a crescent moon, swinging a wooden sword. He remembers vowing to practice 100, even 1,000 swings. The memory sparks a sudden realization. Perhaps it is possible to awaken a skill through sheer effort. His mind then drifts to his original purpose, to meet his older sister. He recalls his life's work, using his trading skill to collect abilities others discard. He thinks of the vast array he's handled: management, acting, appraisal, psychology, speech, presence detection, and even the legendary Eternal Youth. Looking back at the determined girl, he has a moment of clarity. He realizes that somewhere along the way, he had forgotten the fiery spirit he himself possessed in his youth. Unaware that he is listening, the girl clenches her small fists and vows that, at the very least, she will meet him again. Hearing this, the Collector picks up his lantern. He acknowledges the hazards of his work, but her resolve has clearly stirred something within him. He makes a firm decision, resolving to remove all skills from his slots except for those that are absolutely necessary. He will retain presence detection, psychology, acting, and speech. He also makes a point to keep 2 others, management and a certain skill known as eternal youth. With his course of action set, he finds the girl training alone in the snowy mountains under the light of a crescent moon. He approaches her, introducing himself as the collector, and explains that he was worried and came looking for her. The girl recognizes him from their encounter earlier that day. Her recognition brings no warmth. She angrily accuses him of interrupting her training and tells him to leave if he's only there to mock her. The collector, taken aback, tries to protest that this isn't his intention, realizing that without his speech and acting skills active, his words are not coming out as smoothly as he'd like. He stammers, flustered, as the girl turns away slightly. She clarifies her frustration, explaining that even if she does manage to awaken a skill, she has no way to prove it without someone who possesses an appraisal skill. Understanding her predicament, he reveals his own appraisal skill, ranked at level 30. He offers to use it for her, free of charge, if she would like. The girl stares at him, wide-eyed and completely astonished by the proposition. Sometime later, he returns to her training ground in the snowy wilderness. "Hello," he says. The girl greets his arrival with a wry smile, remarking that he's an oddball for actually showing up as promised. He immediately begins to help. First, he holds a thick log steady for her to practice striking with her sword. Afterwards, he kneels and gently tends to her hands, which have become worn from the intense training. His assistance continues into the night. Inside a small cabin, he watches over the girl as she sleeps, exhausted. Later, stepping outside into the cold, he is startled to find her standing right behind him, fully awake. She, however, is full of energy. With a bright smile and arms outstretched, she calls out his name, Collector, and cheerfully states that she figured it was about time for him to show up. Her voice pulls him from his thoughts. "What's the matter? You're spacing out," she asks, noticing his distant expression. The collector is visibly startled, caught completely off guard by her observation. His mind drifted back to a recent conversation with the boisterous, unskilled man. The man had proudly recounted his latest feat, boasting that he defeated an intermediate monster with a single swing and asking if it wasn't amazing. The collector, lost in the memory, recalled listening patiently. The man had laughed, remarking that it had already been 50 years since they first met. He was surprised the man even remembered the old days, back when it used to take him an entire night just to beat one monster. This memory brought a wave of concern. He realized the man wasn't young anymore. A dark thought surfaced. What if rooting for this miracle, this desperate attempt to awaken a skill, ultimately led the man into a situation that would kill him? The thought solidified into a grim resolution. He couldn't let the man continue pushing himself any more than this. He had to stop him now, before it was too late. But his resolve was immediately challenged by the memory of the man's unwavering optimism. He had declared that once he awakened a skill, he would become a beacon of hope for all the unskilled, certain he was just one step closer to his goal. The memory shattered as a sharp voice cut through his reverie. The young girl stood before him, her hands on her hips. "You're a terrible liar, Collector," she accused. Caught off guard, the collector could only look down and quietly admit, "I suppose so." Within a tavern, sheltered from a raging blizzard, the young collector sits alone at the bar, troubled by the thought that he couldn't stop someone from leaving. A fellow patron, also stranded by the storm, explains that he was visiting a friend who lives in the nearby mountains. The collector is taken aback by the news of someone living in such a remote, cold place, as the patron worries that the human body is too weak to endure such conditions. He asks if this friend stands out, and the patron confirms, mentioning that travelers often tell stories of a muscular old man fighting monsters. The collector realizes they must be talking about the strange old man he knows. The patron's expression turns serious. He warns that a vicious monster has recently appeared in the area, so dangerous that the country has issued an official warning. He strongly advises the collector to stay away from the mountains for now. He adds with concern that despite the warning, some adventurers still went into the mountains, ignoring the danger. The collector asks if the creature is a yeti. The patron considers it, musing that if it were just some giant, white bipedal creature, the old man could probably defeat it. However, he quickly dismisses the idea. He's heard it's much bigger, 3 times the size of a yeti, and that it's a giant capable of breathing cold air. The collector's face pales with shock as the patron cries out his name in alarm. The scene shifts to the snowy mountains where the man called Unskilled stands with a young girl and 2 villagers, staring at something immense. He remarks that it's his first time seeing such a huge monster and urges his companions to move. The creature is revealed to be a frost giant, which unleashes a devastating torrent of icy breath. As the villagers tremble in terror, Unskilled steps forward, placing himself between them and the monster, shouting for them to stay back as he will deal with it. The frost giant glares down with raw power, its breath still misting in the cold air. Unfazed, Unskilled meets its gaze with a look of grim determination. The monster is a top-class gigantic beast from the giant tribe, a foe that ordinary people would never even consider challenging. Realizing the extreme danger his friend is in, the collector bolts from the tavern, running desperately through the deep snow toward the mountains. He pants heavily, racing through the snow-covered woods, his mind reeling. It's impossible, he thinks. Even a full party of adventurers can't handle a single frost giant, and his friend doesn't even have any skills. As he runs, he realizes that even with the skills he sells, he isn't fast enough. He senses two powerful presences ahead. One is the frost giant, and the other is his friend. Meanwhile, the man known as Unskilled stands firm, believing this confrontation might be the very thing to awaken his latent abilities. Before he can act, the frost giant unleashes a tremendous blast of icy breath, the sheer force of it sending the adventurers he was protecting tumbling through the air. Still some distance away, the collector stumbles through the deep snow, shouting with desperation, "Are you okay?" Hearing the boy's voice, Unskilled glances back, his expression hardening. He warns the collector not to interfere, declaring that this one is his. With a thunderous roar, he unleashes a battle cry of such intensity that the colossal frost giant actually flinches in surprise, momentarily halting its advance. Seizing the opening, Unskilled lunges forward and brutally shoves the hilt of his massive sword deep into the giant's open maw. The giant lets out a choked, gurgling scream as dark blood erupts from its mouth, spraying across Unskilled's face and torso. The creature collapses, motionless. From their hiding spot, the adventurers watch in disbelief. They confirm the frost giant isn't moving, realizing the sword dealt a fatal wound, and one recognizes the victor as the strange old man from before. Finally arriving at the scene, the collector pants for breath as he finds his friend collapsed in the snow, wounded but victorious amidst the chilling silence. He kneels in the snow beside the fallen man, Unskilled, who lies with a young girl by his side. With ragged breaths, Unskilled makes a final request, asking the collector to use his appraisal skill one last time. As other adventurers watch in disbelief, murmuring about how a man without skills could have defeated the beast, the collector urges his friend not to speak, his voice tight with concern for the grievous wounds. He gently takes his friend's hand. Unskilled weakly asks about the result. To soothe him, the collector lies, telling him it is very well. As the collector's appraisal skill activates, the truth is revealed across the vast, snowy landscape of his mind. The man has finally gained a skill. Roar. Hearing the news, a final, booming laugh escapes Unstilled's lips. It is a sound of pure triumph and release as his life fades away into the falling snow. Tears stream down the collector's face as he gazes at his departed friend. He thinks to himself what a terrible liar Unskilled had been, pretending to be fine right up until the very end. Later, he carries the man's body on his back, trudging away through the snow-covered woods. The other adventurers and the young girl can only watch him go, their figures small against the vast, cold wilderness as crows circle above. His face is a mask of grim determination, his arms stained with his friend's blood as he bears the heavy burden through the desolate landscape. The arduous journey ends at a small, solitary log cabin, a plume of smoke rising from its chimney into the cold air. Outside the cabin, a fresh grave is marked by a crude wooden post. The young girl, having followed him, approaches and asks if he carved the marker himself. The collector stares at the inscription he made, "Inept Man," and questions why he would carve such a name. The girl looks at the grave and tells him plainly that she watched Unskilled, and he wasn't inept at all. The collector's hand tightens, his knuckles white against the wooden marker. He remains silent, his fist clenched tight as the girl's accusation hung in the air. Memories of the man flooded his mind, his wide, joyful grin, his fierce, determined scowl. The friend he had just lost. This was the tribute he had carved for him. Not just Inept Man, but Outstanding Inept Man, a title for a wonderful person who refused to let himself lose to fate. Standing before the grave as snow began to fall, the collector made a quiet vow. Once spring arrived, he would return and bring more flowers for his friend. Sometime later, in a different season, two figures arrived at a solitary log cabin deep in the mountains. One of them, observing the remote dwelling, placed a fresh bouquet of flowers upon a grave marker nearby. The younger of the two, a girl with blonde hair, read the inscription aloud with a puzzled expression. "Outstanding Inept Man," she repeated, before bursting into laughter. She declared it an utterly odd thing for someone to have written. She turned to her companion with a smirk, seeking agreement. "Right, elder sister?" Her elder sister looked down, her expression hardening. "Yes," she affirmed, crushing the delicate flowers under her foot. "People without talent are trash." In a world where skills can be traded, the young man, known as the collector, sits alone, contemplating his purpose. He rests his chin on his hand, his expression thoughtful as he gazes out at the town. His thoughts darken as a sense of unease washes over him. He realizes his current path isn't enough. A change is needed. A fleeting, painful memory of the Unskilled man he recently encountered flashes through his mind. As he sits in a newly opened diner, the cheerful innkeeper approaches his table with a dessert. She welcomes him warmly, thanking him for visiting so soon and recognizing him as the collector. He graciously dismisses her gratitude, insisting it's fine. He tells her he's simply glad she came, as the diner's existence is thanks to her. The innkeeper notes that they've already been open for several days, the place bustling with patrons. The innkeeper continues to fuss, apologizing for not being able to show him more hospitality. The collector, however, reassures her, telling her not to worry about him. She explains that they've been short-staffed, but their situation improved when an earnest and hardworking young person recently joined them. The innkeeper then calls out to someone named Violet, asking her to serve the collector. A young girl with dark hair and twin tails, carrying a tray, responds with a determined yes. She seems a bit flustered, apologizing for the wait. A faint aura around her notes, "Good luck, LV1." She arrives at the table, her eyes wide with recognition as she looks at him. Timidly, she asks if he is, in fact, the collector. The collector recognizes her in turn. It's the flower salesgirl he gave a flyer to. He remarks to the innkeeper how much the girl has changed, so much so that he didn't recognize her at first. The girl, Violet, confirms she's gotten used to the job and thankfully presents him with an order of steamed buns. Violet places the minuscule buns, filled with herbs, on his table. As the collector thanks her, she shyly recommends the Salisbury steak from the lunch menu, while the diner continues to bustle with activity around them. He explains to his sister that since he just returned from a long trip, he'll have to order something on his next visit. She understands, telling him to take his time. As he walks through the town alone, he reflects on the continuity of life, even in the face of death. Deciding he's done enough skill collecting for the day, he considers buying some flowers for an offering, but then recalls that the flower seller's shop had likely closed down. His thoughts are interrupted when he runs into Violet, who notes that they've encountered each other a lot today. Surprised, he asks if she is still selling flowers in the evening. She confirms, explaining that she raises them in a garden at home to make a bit of extra money. She then hesitantly asks if he has had dinner yet. Startled by the personal question, he stammers that he has not. With a blush, she formally invites him to have dinner at her house, explaining that her mother possesses the cultivation skill and grows delicious vegetables. She adds that he seemed down earlier, and she hopes a good meal might cheer him up. She waits anxiously for his response, her hands clasped in front of her. He silently acknowledges her perceptiveness. The collector, touched by her kindness, accepts her invitation. Violet clarifies that she wants to repay him for introducing her to her new job. Though she humbly describes her house as small and shabby, he readily agrees, much to her delight. As evening deepens into night, they walk together through the quiet streets of the town. She gestures ahead, proudly announcing their arrival at her house, a modest, somewhat run-down building with several windows boarded over. They stop before the front door, standing beside a small but well-tended vegetable garden, the source of the dinner she promised. He followed Violet to the entrance of her home. As she stepped through the doorway, she announced her return and that she had brought the collector with her, asking if he could join them for dinner. From the darkness within, a woman's voice welcomed her home with a hint of surprise. Using his stocked level 30 night vision, the collector's gaze swept over the property, revealing a wonderfully tended garden, a stark contrast to the dilapidated state of the house itself. Inside, he was greeted by Violet's family. Her mother, a woman with kind eyes, apologized for the lack of a better reception, wishing she'd known he was coming. Violet's younger sister realized he was the collector her big sister had been talking about, while her younger brother marveled at the size of his bag. Violet formally introduced them as her family of four: mother, younger brother, and younger sister. Bowing slightly, the collector pardoned his intrusion and introduced himself. The mother smiled, telling him to please have a seat while she prepared some food. Inside a modest home, Violet's mother tells the collector that she wanted to cheer him up and offers to help. Her two youngest children, a boy and a girl, look on with wide, curious eyes. He smiles warmly, confirming that she did. The little girl then speaks up, asking what a collector does. She explains that her big sister, Violet, mentioned that he had introduced her to her job. The collector explains his profession to the children. He trades and collects unneeded skills. The revelation that skills can be collected leaves the children utterly astonished. Their astonishment quickly turns to excitement. They eagerly ask if he would buy their skills, too, lamenting that their family is broke and hasn't been able to afford a group appraisal for years. With a gentle expression, he offers to use his appraisal skill to see what they have, completely free of charge. Their mother watches from the side, a look of gratitude on her face. She hesitates, however, asking if he is sure, her voice trailing off as if holding back a concern. Undeterred, the children plead with him to proceed, their excitement palpable. The collector understands her unspoken fear. He realizes that if her children possess negative skills like Violet's, the results of the appraisal could be devastating for them. His own appraisal skill is noted to be at level 30. The appraisal reveals the boy has grit, fleet-footed, and stout, while the girl has calculation, presence detection, and intimidation. The collector whispers to the stunned mother that their skills are outstanding. Elsewhere, Violet recalls the collector's presence, a thoughtful expression on her face. Her mother reassures Violet that there's no need to worry, even if she wasn't as blessed with skills. But Violet remembers how the collector paid double for her flowers and how she's been less clumsy lately. A suspicion begins to form in her mind. Could he have helped her somehow? The family gathers around a table laden with food. With the collector as their guest, Violet's mother presents the meal, announcing that it is ready. A sense of warmth and community fills the room. The family, along with their guest, enjoys the meal she prepared. The children celebrate the food with a cheerful yay-yay, as the collector formally thanks them for the meal. He takes a bite and finds the simple food deeply comforting. A sudden thought or memory strikes him, causing him to pause. Looking around the table at the warm, shared dinner, he recognizes it as a flavor packed with love. His mind flashes back to a cold, formal meal from his past, realizing this experience is nothing like what he knew. His brief reverie is broken when Violet asks if something is the matter. He quickly assures her that the food is, in fact, very good. After dinner, the children look tired. Their mother, seeing she still has cleaning to do, gratefully accepts the collector's offer to tuck them in, suggesting that stories from his work and travels would serve as good bedtime stories. He sits by their bedside, recounting a tale of a forest and a dragon. Before he can continue, the children interrupt, asking if they can have a word with Big Bro Collector before he leaves. With wide, pleading eyes, they ask him to buy their skills. They explain that their family is poor, and they believe selling their skills might make life a little easier for everyone. The collector is stunned into silence. He looks at them, his mind reeling. They're so young, yet they treasure their families so much. He feels a pang of jealousy at their profound bond. Later, he speaks privately with Violet. He reassures her that he only collects unneeded skills and that her siblings' abilities will be very useful for their futures as long as they are developed. He promises that if they ever truly need money, she can come to him. Violet thanks him for his kindness towards her and her family. As he is about to leave, Violet's mother stops him. She notes how much more cheerful Violet has been lately, then laments that she feels she is always a burden to her children. With sudden resolve, she asks if he would be willing to buy her skills, explaining she wants to save money to make their lives easier. The collector is shocked, realizing she just said the exact same thing as her children. He remains silent for a moment, looking down as he processes the mother's offer. He then explains to her that through his profession, he has seen many families, but the happiness in her home is so bright it dazzles him. He reflects on the nature of skills, how they possess the power to change a person's life, and that his role is to accept trading requests from those who are troubled by them. He continues, clarifying that he doesn't buy skills simply to provide a one-time payment. After all, he knows that true happiness cannot be purchased with money. Looking at the mother and the warmth of her home, he admits that he is actually quite jealous of it. She seems to understand, expressing her gladness that their family appears happy to an outsider. Her expression suddenly brightens with a bold suggestion. If that's the case, she asks, why not become part of their family? She gestures toward Violet, praising her good qualities, just as a flustered Violet herself rushes in, shouting for her mother to stop. With her face flushed red, Violet scolds her mother for saying such strange things and bothering the collector. The mother, momentarily surprised, internally observes that her daughter can be quite pushy when she gets angry. The commotion, however, seems to have had a positive effect on the collector. Now outside and shouldering his pack, a gentle smile forms on his lips. He thinks to himself that being with such a happy family has cheered him up, and that he truly is jealous of them. As he prepares to depart, a small hand tugs on his sleeve. It is Violet, who shyly asks him to ignore what her mother said, but then sincerely invites him to visit their home anytime he wants. The warmth of the gesture feels good, yet it also stirs a sense of discomfort within him. He looks down at the young girl as she continues with earnest sincerity. She tells him that if he ever feels unwell, he should feel free to rely on them, promising that she will make herself useful to him when that time comes. Her words linger in his thoughts as he walks away from the small, warm house. He concludes that such a home is too dazzling for someone like him, but in the quiet of the night, he offers them his sincere thanks. He continues his journey into the darkness, the path ahead illuminated by glowing moths. He feels like one of them, a creature drawn to a distant light, charmed by the warmth he just witnessed and longing for it. He is left alone with a heavy question. Is it truly all right for him to be happy? A young woman with cat-like ears on her headband considers the situation with a confident smirk. She muses that there is no way her elder sister would overlook a world-level anomaly like this. She believes that by staying close to someone named Ripley, her sister might notice that something is amiss and come to her. Elsewhere, the young boy's legs tremble uncontrollably as he stares at the boots of the adventurer before him. The thought of his own elder sister surfaces, and he wonders if he might be able to meet her through this ordeal. The ground beneath him begins to shake violently. He realizes it's starting again, struggling to keep his footing. He wonders aloud if this earthquake is the event the adventurer, Ripley, had mentioned. As the tremors continue, Ripley confirms his fears. The cave's entrance has collapsed again, and the monsters are loose. The boy is struck with terror, questioning if he is fated to die once more, and if the villagers will perish too. He despairs, believing there is no way the two of them alone could defeat such a horde. His mind races with the grim implications. If the world continues to loop because of Ripley's skill, any future where he searches for his sister becomes meaningless. He realizes with horror that this will be the fourth time she has died, a cruel sacrifice of her spirit, just for his sake. His spiraling thoughts are interrupted as Ripley turns to him, her expression resolute. She declares that her merchandise is skills and offers him a cut-rate sale, proposing they defeat the monsters together. The boy can only stare, the name Ripley echoing in his mind as he thinks of her being imprisoned and forever beyond his reach. At that moment, at the source of the tremors, the large, magically inscribed stone ceiling a cave entrance cracks and shatters completely, unleashing the darkness within. From the shattered seal, a horde of grotesque monsters spills forth, slimy, multi-eyed blobs, a fanged reptilian beast, and winged abominations among them, surging out into the open. Faced with this overwhelming threat, the boy turns to Ripley, apologizing that the small pouch of coins he holds is all he has. She looks at his meager offering and accepts, stating it's fine for now and that she will sell him some offensive skills. With the terms agreed upon, the deal is sealed. As Ripley touches the kneeling boy's hand, a list of skills materializes in the air: advanced swordsmanship, perception, and physical ability, all transferred at level 10. The boy looks at his hand, a new determination in his eyes, contemplating what he can now accomplish with these newfound powers. He looks at Ripley, his eyes filled with a newfound resolve. He declares that with the power she has given him, he can finally stand up to the swarm of monsters, overturn his fate, and save the village. In response to his confident declaration, she whirls on him, shouting, "Don't be stupid." She continues, explaining that she would never run from her only skill. If fate can be rewound, then she wants to save her village from the monsters. The boy listens, realizing her personal stake in this fight, and silently hopes her ideals don't end up hurting her. He notes that the cave ahead is swarming with low and intermediate class monsters, and he even spotted a high-class one. They arrive at the entrance to the cave, where a teeming mass of creatures confirms his observation. Slimy, amorphous blobs and winged, reptilian beasts spill out from the dark maw of the cavern. He steels his resolve, understanding the grim mechanics of their situation. Even if Ripley dies this time, the world's time will simply rewind 24 hours, and the knowledge and skills she possessed will be passed on. Acknowledging the sheer number of foes, he turns to her and says, "Let's go." As they charge in, Ripley's own abilities are laid bare, returned by death, swordsmanship, and tenacity. She realizes that, even without her memories after a rewind, she would know something was wrong if she noticed the skills she sold him were missing from her inventory. With that thought, she slices through an approaching monster. The boy marvels at his new power. The advanced swordsmanship is amazing, and the perception skill makes the enemies seem to stand still. He shouts a plan to Ripley, telling her to handle the intermediate class monsters while he uses his stock skills, like fire magic, to deal with the low-class ones. Panting, she agrees. Ripley moves through the horde with lethal efficiency. Her blade becomes a blur, felling a growling, lizard-like creature with a clean, powerful swing. But in the chaotic fray, a monster's sharp claws find their mark, tearing a deep gash across Ripley's side. She lets out a sharp gasp, her face twisting in sudden, intense pain. At the same time, the boy receives a minor scratch on his cheek. He touches the small cut, a stark contrast to the fatal wounds of his past lives. He thinks to himself that a wound like this is nothing, not even a scrape compared to dying. He calls out, asking if Ripley is all right. As he rushes forward, leaving a trail of defeated shadow monsters, he announces that he has dealt with the low-class enemies and is joining her. In response, Ripley, with a fluid arc of her sword, confidently shouts back that there are no problems. His face is alight with a determined grin. He thinks to himself that with the skills he received from the Collector, his own title, he can take on any enemy. It will be a piece of cake. At last, he feels he can finally change his FA, but his thought is cut short by a horrifying sight. A colossal, crystalline golem towers over the cavern path. Before it stands Ripley's body, her sword still held at the ready, but her head has been violently severed, sent flying through the air in a spray of blood. The boy's triumphant expression vanishes, replaced by pure horror. A single, desperate cry tears from his throat. Ripley-san. The Collector recognizes the creature as the high-level monster from the cave, the very one that caused Ripley's death in the other timeline. Determined to prevent that outcome, he prepares his stock skills, Earth Armor, Leah, and Instant Force, vowing to defeat it and be ready to intervene at any moment. As he focuses, Ripley surges forward, leaping into the air with her sword raised. She shouts with conviction, declaring that she will change her own fate, as well as the fate of the village and its people. Her blade slices down, shattering the monster's stone-like defenses. Watching from a safe distance, the Collector observes her prowess, thinking to himself that she is about to witness the power of his own unique skill. In a quiet moment after her successful strike, a profound realization washes over Ripley. With a look of weary relief, she understands that fate has truly been changed. The battle is won. The village returns to a state of peace, its streets once again filled with the calm, everyday movements of its inhabitants. Standing beside the Collector, Ripley bows her head, overcome with emotion. She whispers that she's so glad, then looks up with a bright, tearful smile. She thanks him for his help, overjoyed that both she and everyone else were saved. Her relief suddenly crumbles, replaced by the weight of past trauma. She clutches the Collector's arm, her voice trembling as she confesses that she had died over and over again, a total of 4 times. He looks down at her, his expression frozen in shock. She presses on, desperate. She asks if he truly buys skills, acknowledging that hers is troublesome. She pleads with him, pointing out that his management skill would allow him to store her ability, returned by death, outside his normal slots. She insists that money is no object. Taking a moment to compose herself, Ripley formally extends her hand. With quiet gravity, she asks him to please buy her one and only skill, returned by death. The collector agrees to take her only skill for free, sealing the deal. However, his expression is grim as he immediately explains the harsh reality. He has tried this before, and his level 1 trading skill is incapable of acquiring a person's only skill. Ripley's hope shatters, her face falling in utter shock and despair. She clutches the collector, her voice trembling with the horrifying realization of her curse. As long as she has this skill, she is unable to truly die. She questions if she is doomed to repeat an agonizing death for all eternity, or worse, if her loop will eventually drag the entire world down with her. The reason for his powerlessness is a harsh, established truth. There are no tales of an only skill ever being leveled up. They are said to be permanently stuck at level 1. He looks upon her, admitting to himself that he cannot begin to fathom the depths of her fear and anxiety. He realizes that if time itself keeps repeating, someone is bound to notice eventually, and the agony of looping through death will await her once more. His thoughts darken further, considering the possibility of someone capturing her to exploit her return by death. She will be killed over and over for their benefit. The thought makes him feel pathetic, causing him to question why he even became the collector in the first place. But then, a new logic cuts through his despair. If only skills have a concept of levels at all, even just level 1, then they must be capable of reaching level 2. This thought connects to his own purpose. The reason he works as the collector is to hone his skill so he can meet a certain someone. He turns to Ripley with renewed determination, apologizing for his current inability to help. He makes a vow. He will raise his trading skill to level 2 and purchase her return by death. He tells her that giving up while there's still hope is not an option, as a friend who fought to the bitter end would laugh at him for it. Her hope is rekindled. Ripley clenches her fist, telling herself she cannot afford to whine. The collector's words plant a new thought. There is still much she doesn't know about her own skill, and perhaps it, too, could reach level 2. As the collector begins to walk away, she calls out, asking if she can lend his strength again should her own skill get her down. He turns with a reassuring wave, telling her of course. As he departs, he reflects on the shocking nature of return by death. He continues on his path, musing that only skills never fail to surprise. Thanks to this encounter, he feels that time has finally started moving forward for him again. With a determined expression, he presses onward. The days of his work as the skill collector and the search for his sister have resumed with new purpose. In a world where special abilities are known as skills, a young man, known as the collector, walks through a familiar town. He finds it relaxing to return here. His business is the buying and selling of these skills. A local greets him, noting his absence and asking if he's taking the day off. The collector smiles and confirms he is. He glances at a letter in his hand, revealing that his presence in town is not for leisure. He was called here by one of his regular clients. His client's request leads him to a building with posters of an arena champion on the wall. He knocks on a heavy door and announces his arrival. The door opens to a training area where a powerfully built man with spiky, light-toned hair spars intensely. An onlooker shouts that no one can possibly beat Leondold. The fighter, Leondold, turns from his partner and acknowledges the collector's arrival. Leondold, the arena champion, thanks the collector, explaining that the monster attraction skill he bought has been very helpful for his training. He then gestures to a stocky man beside him, introducing him as his best friend, Kangi's, and the one who actually needs help. The collector realizes Kangi's is the client he's been regularly selling the skill to, while Leondold asks who the collector is. Without warning, Kangi's desperately grabs the collector's hands, pleading with him to give his wife the cooking skill and promising to pay any price. The collector, startled, turns to the champion for an explanation, reminding him that they had agreed to keep skill sales discreet to avoid such demanding situations. Leondold casually puts an arm around his friend, arguing that he should at least be able to share this with his best friend. He asks the collector to handle the matter privately. With a sigh, the collector agrees to hear the full details. To facilitate their discussion, the three of them move to a quieter location, sitting together at a small table. As they sit, Kangi stares into his cup, remarking that it has been a while since he's seen a proper drink. The collector, puzzled by the comment, asks what he means. Kangi prepares to tell him the truth. His expression softens into one of pure bliss. He explains that he just got married to a lovely wife. He provides the income as a fighter and adventurer, while she does her best as a housewife. He remains unconvinced by the collector's logic. The young skill trader points out that it would be more practical and cheaper for his wife to simply learn or practice cooking. With tears welling in his eyes, Kangi clenches a fist, insisting that he must buy the cooking skill for her because she is utterly hopeless at it. He elaborates on the depth of her culinary ineptitude, explaining it's far beyond a simple lack of skill. She fails to measure ingredients, mistakes a ladle for a tablespoon, and believes adding sugar can fix something that's too salty. He recalls a specific meal that was so awful it made him gag, yet his wife, proud of her homemade efforts, was completely oblivious. The collector, listening to the tale, asks if Kangi's has ever actually told her about this. Blushing, Kangi's admits that he could never say such a thing to his cute wife, resigning himself to the fact that at this rate, nothing will ever change. As Kangi's despairs, the arena champion, Leondold, speaks to the collector. He sympathizes, but admits he didn't expect a man as brave as Kangi's to be so thoroughly defeated by a meal. The collector then reveals his strategy. Figuring talk alone was insufficient, he had Kangi's bring the actual food with him. The evidence of this culinary disaster sits before them, contained within a neatly packed lunchbox. As the collector prepares to open it, a powerful sense of foreboding washes over him. His level 30 intuition skill screams a warning, urging him to flee. Leondold, noticing the hesitation, confesses he hasn't seen the contents either and is now also feeling scared. Steeling himself, the collector begins to lift the lid. The moment the box is opened, a horrifying miasma erupts, revealing a grotesque concoction of tentacles and strange, spotted mushrooms. The collector recoils as his defensive skills, poison resistance, barrier, and endurance, all at level 30, instinctively activate against the toxic presence. Kangi shouts from the side, chastising him for not airing out the room first. Leondold turns pale, and the collector stares in speechless horror as the contents seem to burp audibly. Kangi's explains that his wife lovingly calls this dish overflowing bliss of paradise. To the collector, it looks more like an overflowing horror of hell. Sweating and looking nauseous, Leondold turns to Kangi's in disbelief, asking if he's serious and if his wife actually consumed this monstrosity. Kangi's calmly confirms that she eats it as if it were nothing special. The collector recalls Kangi's earlier admission of how disgusting the food was. Leondold, however, driven by a strange curiosity, picks up a piece with chopsticks. He wonders aloud if perhaps it only looks and smells awful, but might not taste so bad, as he brings the terrifying morsel closer to his lips. He recoils from the taste, and Kangi's offers a less than reassuring comment. The only thing he can say is that Leondold probably won't die from eating it. The collector looks on, calling out to the champion with concern. As Leondold rides in the background, the collector uses his appraisal skill on Kangi's, discovering the man has poison resistance at level 13. Kangi's sheepishly admits that he's simply gotten used to his wife's cooking over time. The collector realizes this goes beyond mere bad cooking. It's on a completely different level. He speculates that it could be some kind of negative skill and asks Kangi's if he ever thought to check his wife's skill certificate. Kangi's confirms he had the same idea, recalling how he asked to see her skill certificate, which all citizens receive at age 10. However, she flatly refused. He explains that she continues to refuse, which the collector finds strange, realizing he could check it himself with his appraisal skill. Changing tactics, Kangi's proposes that if it's not a skill issue, they can turn this into a cooking class. He suggests throwing a party at his home, bringing his wife, and having the collector use his abilities to assess her. A recovered Leondold enthusiastically agrees to the plan. Hearing this, the collector has an idea of his own. He recalls someone he knows who is very knowledgeable about cooking and considers inviting her as well. Kangi's, tearing up with gratitude, exclaims that would be a huge help, and so, the day of the home party arrives. The gathering is to be held at a grand, multi-story residence. The expert guest, a young woman named Samire, arrives. She's shy, admitting it's her first home party and that it might become a cooking class. The collector apologizes for the sudden invitation, explaining he sought her help because the food at her diner was so good. Flustered but pleased, she hopes she can be useful. She steps inside, where Leondold greets them cheerfully. As they join the other guests, the collector mentions that Kangi's should be arriving soon. At that very moment, Kangi's bursts in, apologizing for his tardiness while carrying a large, covered dish. He arrived with a wide grin, announcing that it took him a while to pick out a gift, prompting an exclamation from the collector. Standing beside Kangi's was his wife, a woman with long, wavy hair, who gently chided him, suggesting he should be more polite before apologizing for their intrusion. With a kind smile, she then formally introduced herself to the assembled group. At a lively gathering, a woman with long, light-colored hair bows deeply. She introduces herself as Celiferi, Kangi's wife, and thanks the collector for taking care of him. Kangi's looks on, flustered, as his gaze falls upon a dish his wife has prepared. The collector also notices the food. Nearby, Leondold teases Kangi's, asking if his wife isn't too good for him, but Celiferi proudly declares they married for love and that she was the one who pursued him. He knows something's wrong. However, determined to understand the reason behind what he deems disaster cooking, the collector focuses his gaze and activates his appraisal skill, which registers at level 30. The appraisal reveals Celiferi's abilities. Creativity at level 18, paired with a shockingly high tastelessness skill at level 25. He processes the information, confirming his suspicions. The incredibly high level of tastelessness, combined with her creativity, must have taken her skills in a very unfortunate direction. His eyes drift toward the smiling Celiferi as he silently wonders about her third, as yet unseen skill. As the group watches Celiferi happily eat a portion of her own cooking, Samire leans in close to the collector, whispering that this topic might be better discussed in private. Before he can react, Celiferi herself approaches him. She identifies him as the collector Sama Kangi's had told her about and earnestly asks to speak with him about her skills, suggesting they meet outside when he is free. The direct request startles Samaire, causing her to drop a plate, which shatters on the floor. As she apologizes, both the collector and Kangi's turn in concern, asking if she is all right. Using the commotion as a chance to slip away, the collector steps out of the room. Kangi's watches him go, his expression filled with worry. He begins by apologizing for calling Celiferi out so suddenly. Explaining that his appraisal skill revealed her abilities, he watches as she abruptly drops into a deep bow, pleading with him not to let her husband know. Looking down at her, he questions why she would be so desperate to hide her high-level cosmetic skill. His mind races with the implications. Her cosmetic skill is even more potent than her tastelessness. At such a level, she could completely transform her own face. Celiferi looks up, her expression a mixture of anxiety and shame. He then reveals that he also possesses clairvoyance, which allowed him to understand her secret. He asks directly if she is hiding a burn mark. Stunned that he has seen through everything, Celiferi can only stare in shock. Celiferi begins her story, explaining that the mark is permanent. It came from a childhood accident that left her with severe burns on her face. Because of the scars, she grew up hating her own face and had resigned herself to never finding love. One day, however, a gust of wind blew her hat from her head, leading to a fateful meeting. A young boy with a bright smile and a spiky mohawk, a young Kangi's, picked up her fallen hat and called out to the cool lady. Instead of being repulsed by her scar, Kangi's pointed to it and declared it a life's badge, exclaiming how badass it was. Celiferi was utterly stunned, barely able to process that he thought she was cool. She watched him leave, realizing no one had ever said anything like that to her before. She knew he probably wouldn't even remember their brief encounter, but his innocent bluntness left a permanent mark on her heart. Celiferi confesses that Kangi's saved her that day. Though she believes he would accept her as she is, she had fallen deeply in love with him. No matter what, she wanted to be with him, and that is why she hides her face. Her voice trembled as she pleaded with the collector, begging him not to tell her husband about the cosmetic skill. She worried that without it, Kangi's would never find her cute, regardless of what he'd once said. The collector listened, his expression thoughtful as he processed her words about always showing a mask to the one she loved. Before he could respond, the door to the room was thrown open with a crash. Kangi's stood in the doorway, his face grim, and announced to the stunned pair that he had heard everything. He strode purposefully toward Celiferi, who flinched and whispered his name. He told her to listen, his voice firm, declaring that the one thing he hated most was seeing her suffer, but that she should not underestimate him. Closing the distance between them, Kangi's pulled her into a powerful, reassuring hug. He held her close, telling her that what he truly loved was her dedication. His embrace tightened as he vowed to love her mark, her cooking, and everything else about her. Celiferi was left speechless by his declaration, while in the background, the collector and Samaire watched the emotional scene unfold. As the couple held each other, the collector mused that perhaps this was the true meaning of love, to accept someone completely. He quietly told Samaire they should give the two some space and discuss the skill issue later, and they both slipped out of the room. Sometime later, the collector sat at a table in a restaurant with Samaire and Leondold, cautiously taking a bite from a forkful of a very unusual-looking meal. He chewed with a thoughtful expression as Samaire asked if the taste was just as he had imagined. The dish before him was a grotesque collection of tentacles and strange mushrooms. The collector confirmed that the taste was indeed due to Celiferi's high-level cosmetic skill. Leondold noted her other impressive skills, like high-level poison resistance and barriers. The conversation brought to mind Kangi's bliss over his cute wife, who now wanted him to taste delicious food. Since the skill was strong but disadvantageous, the collector decided he would have to charge for its reclamation rather than simply taking it. Hearing this, Samaire sighed, realizing she would be the one sent to buy back the skill. She dreaded listening to another of the collector's love-struck customers, only for Kangi's, now at their table, to burst into tears of joy, proclaiming he would pay anything for his wife. The collector simply watched the scene unfold. She playfully chides the collector, declaring that he doesn't understand a girl's heart. He questions this, and she smiles, conceding that being loved so unconditionally is rather sweet. With the conversation settled, the collector announces their next move. It's time to go and reclaim the skill. As they prepare to leave, the collector recalls Kangi's own perspective on the matter. He had mused that leaving the cosmetic skill at level 1 was acceptable, confident that Celiferi could overcome its effect within a year if she truly tried. With this understanding, he and Samaire set off through the city streets. The collector reflects internally that this complication is precisely what makes things enjoyable, concluding that both cooking and life are better with a little spice. Skills are not a blessing exclusive to humans. Even monsters possess their own abilities. Some of these are unique to their kind, such as Skill Eater or Mind Link. The existence of such monster-specific skills deeply piques the interest of a skill collector. Reflecting on this, the young collector closes his book. He reasons that there is no way to negotiate with such creatures. They only attack and do not seem to comprehend words, making any attempt at communication futile. His thoughts then turn to more practical matters. As he walks along a sandy shore, the smell of the sea in the air, he considers his next move. A fishing village lies ahead, and he decides it might be a good place to conduct some business. Arriving in the village, he cheerfully greets the locals, announcing his trade. He calls out that he is buying unwanted skills and that anyone should feel free to stop by. The villagers look on as he makes his presence known. He finds the village to be quite lively, a great place for business. Holding a coin, he decides that although it's a bit early, it's a good time to get some lunch. While searching for a place to eat, his gaze falls upon a strange, modern-looking tower on the edge of the village. He pauses, hand to his chin, wondering what the structure could be. He soon finds an outdoor eatery by the water. A hearty meal of grilled fish and soup is served to him. Taking a bite, he finds the food delicious. A young waiter approaches, commenting on the great food in view, and asks if this is the collector's first time in the village. The collector confirms and states that he has something he'd like to ask. The waiter readily agrees to listen. The collector then points toward the horizon and asks about the peculiar building he saw earlier on the edge of the village. He listens as the young villager explains that the building is a house where a weirdo named Therapy lives. The boy elaborates that while some find her strange, she claims to be able to talk to monsters, a feat the local children think is cool. Intrigued by this rumor, the collector's interest is visibly piqued. His mind races with the possibilities. If it's true, communicating with monsters would open up many new options. He realizes that obtaining rare skills this way might even help him find his sister. The potential is huge. It is definitely worth a visit. Having made his decision, he stands before the strange building, confirming that this must be Therapy's house. He marvels at its unique architecture, which resembles a fortress. Raising his hand, he knocks on the door, noting a strange, faint sound emanating from it as he does. To better understand the oddity, he decides to use his appraisal skill on the door itself. The results of the appraisal leave him stunned. The door is enchanted with several skills: silence, concealment, and deodorization, all at level 10. He realizes with a shock that this isn't just a door, it's an ancient relic. Ancient relics are remnants of a highly advanced civilization that once existed in this world. They are artifacts that cannot be recreated with present-day technology, and most people are not even aware of their existence. This knowledge makes him cautious. He had knocked, but there was no answer. He activates his presence detection skill, but senses no one inside. Considering that ancient relics are known to be unstable and dangerous, he begins to think it's better not to get involved. He hesitates, weighing his options. Despite having come all this way, the risk seems too great. He decides it would be wiser to come back later and turns to leave. Just as he turns away, the door creaks open behind him. A young woman with messy hair and glasses peers out, asking if she can help. She mentions that his knocking woke her up, a statement that startles him, as his presence detection skill had registered nothing. He stammers an apology for waking her, his mind reeling. He can't understand why he didn't sense her presence at all, even while using his skill. A chilling realization dawns on him. It's not just her presence. Something is blocking his ability to appraise her skills as well. Unaware of his internal turmoil, the woman smiles cheerfully, telling him not to worry, as it was her own fault for sleeping in until noon. He remains on high alert, recalling the rumors he'd heard about a woman named Therapy who could communicate with monsters. His eyes fixate on the unfamiliar design of her necklace, and he theorizes that it must be an ancient relic, the only explanation for why he cannot sense her presence or appraise her skills. His intense focus is abruptly broken as Therapy leans in close, her expression beaming with excitement. She eagerly asks if he, too, is interested in monsters, leaving him momentarily speechless. Before he can formulate a response, she presses on, asking which type of monster he prefers. She enthusiastically shares that she's been very into beast types lately, though she still appreciates the usual goblins, confessing a particular fondness for chubby ones over skinny ones. The collector is completely bewildered by the conversation. Her monologue continues unabated. She gushes that monsters become truly cute once you start raising them, though she muses that giants might be too big and difficult to manage. The collector's alarm bells ring loudly. He questions if this is all a ploy to lower his guard and begins to doubt if she is even human. His mind races with the implications of her words. Raising monsters is incredibly dangerous. They would surely try to eat someone if given the chance. He concludes that the kingdom would be well within its rights to send a subjugation force to deal with such a threat. As his thoughts darken, Therapy suddenly catches herself, realizing with a sheepish expression that she got carried away and wasn't supposed to say all that. The collector notes, however, that the village remains calm. The locals simply seem to regard her as an oddity, not a genuine threat. She then bows deeply, sincerely apologizing and asking him to please forget what she said. The collector stands silently, still processing the strange and confusing conversation. The collector finds himself on the ground, looking up in a daze as his skills, intuition, barrier, and leap, all at level 30, flare in his mind. The girl, Therapy, stands over him, her cloak casting a shadow. He sits up abruptly, realizing he was saved by the skill of an item in his stock. He confronts Therapy, asking what the beam was and why she tried to kill him, only for her to react with wide-eyed shock, insisting she would never do such a thing. Now standing outside a peculiar, modern-looking building. He asks her if she remembers their conversation. From a distance, she confirms that she does. The building's door slides open, revealing a sleek, humanoid golem standing silently in the entryway. Therapy looks on, startled by its sudden appearance. Inside, the collector examines the construct, wondering if this humanoid golem is another of the ancient relics that fill Therapy's house. Therapy sighs with relief, telling the golem, whom she calls Aliaria, that the collector seems to be interested. As they walk together, he reflects that Therapy is far stranger than he initially thought. He wants to remain on guard, but the tension he tries to maintain keeps slipping away in her presence. Her strange behavior continues as she suddenly turns on Aliaria, calling the golem a meanie. Therapy reminds it that she was the one who found it and formed a master-servant contract with it. Aliaria calmly retorts that Therapy is useless and should be quiet. The golem then addresses the collector, noting that while he looks like a merchant, he somehow managed to block its memory erasure beam. The golem steps between them, telling Therapy to get back. It confronts the collector, stating that his skills are under concealment and that he seems to know about ancient relics. He apologizes for the late introduction and reveals his identity as a skill collector, a humble merchant who is simply interested in Therapy. Aliaria's internal systems detect no lie. He considers the situation, realizing his curiosity about Therapy, a girl who can talk to monsters, is a powerful motivator. He proposes a proper trade to Aliaria. He will not share any of the information he has learned, and in exchange, the golem will tell him about Therapy. He accepts the offer, noting internally that while he should remain alert, he senses no hostility. Aliaria confirms the deal, but before the collector can speak, Therapy interjects, declaring that she'll take the offer, stealing his line. The scene around them dissolves into a view of a tranquil beach. The idyllic view vanishes, replaced by the stark reality of their location. A high-tech room containing a large, caged monster that lets out a low grunt. His attention snaps back to the present. He asks why they're showing him this, his mind racing with the fact that Therapy is indeed keeping monsters, though he still doesn't understand the full picture. In response, Aliaria explains that what he is seeing on the surrounding monitors is a playback of Therapy's life. The golem then asks if he truly wants to know more about her. He clarifies that what he really wants to know is how Therapy can genuinely talk to monsters. Flustered, Therapy tells him to stop, complaining that she didn't come to watch a drama. She then playfully threatens to switch to a live reading of his original poetry instead. Therapy enthusiastically explains that she has loved monsters for a long time, and by pouring her affection into them, she eventually began to understand what they were saying. The collector is taken aback, wondering if it's an acquired skill or simply a hallucination. Before he can dwell on it, Aliaria confirms that it is the truth, much to Therapy's chagrin at being ignored again. The golem recounts how Therapy has loved monsters since she was little, immersing herself in research alone in this facility until, one day, she gained something new. The golem continues, revealing that Therapy's innate hallucination skill evolve, gaining the ability skill slot interact. This allowed her to truly connect with the creatures she studied. He asks why they kept this a secret from him. Aliaria retorts that he wouldn't have believed them anyway. Therapy adds that she's glad he came, as his presence helps. The collector finally understands. Her ability to talk to monsters is simply a part of who she is. He questions if he is just a convenient third party to them. Aliaria explains that because Therapy raises monsters, they had to reject anyone who came to see her. Therapy adds that the necklace she wore to hide her skills was just an accessory, but now that he is here, they can finally take it off. He agrees to Aliaria's request to use his appraisal skill on Therapy, a request made because the golem could tell from his demeanor that he possessed the ability. The appraisal confirms it. Therapy possesses hallucination LV.3. The collector slumps in his seat, realizing with disappointment that true communication with monsters remains an impossible fantasy. Hearing his dejection, Therapy innocently offers to buy the hallucination skill if he finds it unwanted, causing the collector to grunt in disbelief. Aliaria interjects, explaining that the skill is essential for someone like Therapy. Sometime later, the collector and Aliaria depart, walking away from the research facility. He clutches the strap of his pack, a determined smile on his face as he reaffirms his goals, to expand his business and, more importantly, to meet a certain someone again. As they walk, Therapy asks why a merchant like him would want to speak with monsters. Simultaneously, Aliaria's internal scanner beeps, and she chides the collector for scanning her belongings without permission, noting a sentimental portrait in a locket. The mention of the portrait seems to trigger a memory for the golem. She turns to the collector and states that she saw that very woman just the other day. The collector stops, stunned. Aliaria confirms it, explaining that she and Therapy encountered the woman, his sister, in a small village to the south while conducting a monster field survey. He listens intently as Aliaria elaborates. The woman stood out, she explains, because she was offering free appraisal services to both the local villagers and any travelers passing through. Aliaria adds that the people were calling her Free Appraisal. The name echoes in the collector's mind, and his hand tightens on his pack strap, his expression hardening with resolve. He pictured her in his mind, a vision of his sister gently placing a hand on a small child's head. To the people she helped, she was known as the Saint. After a long journey, the collector disembarks from a large passenger cart. The driver wishes him well as he sets off on foot, thanking the man before turning towards the road ahead. He breaks into a run along a dusty path, his backpack bouncing with his hurried steps. He reflects that no matter how fast he ran, his heart continued to race, and he could not calm his agitated mind. His frantic pace brings him to the crest of a hill, where a small village comes into view below. Clutching his chest, he breathes a sigh of relief, realizing he has finally found her, his sister. The word saint escapes his lips as a whisper. The thought of her brings back a dark memory, the tragedy from years ago when his sister, Nei-san, massacred their entire hometown, leaving it engulfed in flames. He remembers the moment he received the first piece of information about her whereabouts since that terrible incident. Staring down at the village, his expression hardens with resolve. He knows it could be a trap, but he has no other choice but to proceed. Upon entering the nearby settlement, he approaches a villager carrying a hoe and asks about the saint. The man confirms she isn't in this particular village, but can be found beyond the forest. He warns the boy against going just out of curiosity, prompting the collector to ask why. The mention of missing people confirms the collector's fears. He knows his sister disguises her deadly plunder skill as appraisal, killing her targets after deeming them useless. Ignoring the villager's final warning about monsters in the forest, he thanks the man, a determined smile on his face, and declares that he has to see the saint. He ventures into the dark woods, but his advance is halted by a sudden, guttural roar. A hulking, one-eyed monster emerges from the trees. As he prepares for a fight, his thoughts turn back to his sister, wondering why someone who already had everything would still feel the need to steal skills from others. He stands over the fallen beast, the fight already won. A fresh cut marks his cheek, and blood spatters the ground near the monster's lifeless limb, a testament to the brief but vicious struggle. Without pausing to rest, he sprints onward through the woods. His mind races, consumed by thoughts of his sister's skill, plunder. It is a rare power, one that can only be possessed by a single person at a time, and history shows that all its previous wielders were infamous villains. He recalls the grim legends, the Plunder King, who clawed his way up from the slums to seize a throne for himself, and the Dark Hero, once a symbol of hope, who betrayed his comrades, stole their skills, and plotted the end of the world. A painful thought surfaces: if only the previous user of plunder had lived longer, his sister might never have acquired it. The thought triggers a memory of a younger, weeping self being held in his sister's comforting embrace. He dismisses the thought as meaningless. Dwelling on what-ifs is pointless. All he seeks now is an answer to the one question that matters. Why did his sister have to become a plunderer? He pushes onward, his resolve hardening. His journey through the forest finally ends as he reaches a clearing. Below him, nestled in a valley, is a small town. He realizes this must be the place he's been searching for, the current domain of the saint. He pauses, taking a moment to compose himself. The blood on his vest and the cut on his face are evidence of the dangers he's faced. He wipes his cheek, his eyes fixed on the destination below. As he studies the town, a strange feeling washes over him. It's a rural, quiet place. It feels just like his hometown. The thought is unsettling, but he pushes it aside. His priority is clear. First, he must find the saint. He considers his approach. The quickest way to locate her would be to ask the locals. But he knows revealing his true identity as the discarded skill collector would be incredibly dangerous. If this town is a trap, it would be a fatal mistake. He decides on a cover story. He won't be the collector. Instead, he will be a simple traveling merchant. With his plan in place, he adjusts his headband and walks towards the town gate with newfound purpose. He arrives at the gate of a remote village, presenting himself as a traveling merchant. The two men guarding the entrance note how far he's come, and he confirms he's hoping for some business opportunities. As they speak, a passing adventurer overhears and excitedly asks if the collector has also come to see the Saint Sama. The adventurer adds that he heard one can receive a free appraisal in this village. The guards and the adventurer enthusiastically agree, praising the saint as being too good for such a small village. They gush over her beauty and the fact that she appraises skills for free. Listening to their praise, the collector thinks to himself that this only makes him want to meet her more. Now understanding who they mean, he asks where he can find this Saint Sama. The guards inform him that she lives on a hill at the edge of the village, but pointedly warn him not to get any strange ideas. They elaborate on their warning, stating that the saint is capable of using all sorts of powerful magic. With a thin, knowing smile, the collector replies that he will keep that in mind. While setting up his wares, he reflects on the encounter. He realizes the villagers told him about the saints so easily because they have absolute trust in her strength, believing no outsider could ever possibly harm her. His thoughts are punctuated by the townsfolk's chatter. An elderly woman mentions the saint gives advice on developing abilities. A young boy calls her a kind older sister, and a young woman marvels at how wonderful she is for giving free weekly appraisals to everyone. He then overhears a more troubling conversation. Two women discuss missing people, but one expresses certainty that the saint will find them upon her return. The other agrees, stating they are safe as long as the saint is with them. The mention of missing persons catches the collector's full attention. His expression hardens as he processes this new information. He quietly thinks of his sister, realizing the immense, blind faith the people place in her. A young boy, likely the one from earlier, thanks him and points the way, telling the merchant that the saint lives in the house on the hill. As the collector looks toward the path, he clutches a rolled-up paper and grimly remembers that his own childhood house was also on a hill. He remembers his past, recalling how his sister was the one who stayed with him in that house, even after their parents had abandoned him. He thinks of the fights he used to get into, and how he would always return home to find her waiting. A look of firm resolve settles on his face. With these memories strengthening his purpose, he walks up the path toward the house, a sense of disbelief washing over him. This has to be a joke, he thinks. He reaches the front door and knocks firmly. The building is an exact replica of his childhood home. He rehearses his cover story. He is a traveling merchant who heard rumors and wishes to meet the saint. Receiving no answer, he pushes the door open and cautiously steps inside. The house is eerily silent. His eyes scan the entryway, now filled with bookshelves and stacks of books. The sight triggers a fond memory of his sister, beaming with joy as she carried a pile of books just like these. The memory fades, and his expression shifts as he takes in the familiar, yet altered surroundings. A flicker of unease crosses his face. His gaze drifts towards the staircase, and another memory surfaces. A younger version of his sister hanging a picture on the wall as he watched from below. Standing at the foot of the stairs, he calls out into the silence, his voice hesitant. "Nei-san, are you there?" His question echoes, unanswered. Then, at the top of the landing, a figure stands. It is his sister, her long, light hair cascading down her back. She is in a room filled with books, bathed in the soft light, filtering through a window, her back turned to him. She turns, a faint, unreadable smile gracing her lips as her brother's shocked eye comes into view. With a calm, almost detached tone, she offers a welcome. Her hand gently touches a pendant on her chest as she looks at him, her expression unsettlingly placid. She confirms his identity, not with warmth, but with a chilling question. "My dear brother, isn't it?" The collector realizes with dawning horror that the saint is trying to kill him. She unleashes a powerful barrier skill, dismissing it as a mere nuisance before smiling cruelly and preparing another assault, telling him to just die already. Her next attack manifests as a suffocating dark energy that envelopes him, making it hard to breathe. As he struggles, he wonders if the saint also possesses the plunder skill. If she is imitating his sister, he questions, did she also plunder skills from the villagers? He reasons that plunder is a rare skill, with only one person per era capable of holding it. Therefore, as long as his sister is alive, it should be impossible for someone else to have the exact same ability. Despite this logic, he cannot make sense of the situation. He desperately attempts to use his appraisal skill on the saint, but the strain is immense and he cannot get a clear reading. The dark energy coalesces into thorny vines that shatter his defenses. The saint declares him worn out and prepares to deliver the final blow. But as he faces her, the collector's expression hardens with resolve. He has a gamble he must take. His mind flashes back to all the research he conducted on plunder after parting with his sister. He recalls his own abilities, mental resistance and status ailment resistance, both at level 30. He theorizes that resistance-type skills might be able to block it, though he is uncertain if it will work against the version his sister wields. The saint looks on, momentarily surprised by his stillness. He also knows something else. A memory surfaces of the saint, her face twisted in annoyance as someone tells her to shut up. She retorts that it's just an imitation anyway. The memory clarifies. Her skill is mimicry. She explains that it can only ever be a copy of someone else's skill. A younger version of her is shown, holding a staff, having used mimicry to copy lightning magic. In a flashback, the young saint excitedly tells her friends that she'll be a mage too, proudly demonstrating that she can use lightning magic just like them. She admits she only copied it because she thought it looked the coolest. Her childhood friends, however, react with scorn. They call her a dirty copycat and demand that she stop copying them, leaving the young saint looking hurt and rejected. She lies on the ground, looking up at the collector, and tells him he doesn't stand a chance, that the outcome is not for him to decide. Kneeling over her, he retorts that one can't know the result until they try. As he speaks, his eyes narrow. A sudden flash of insight from his intuition LV.30 skill alerts him to a grave and immediate danger. In the next instant, a catastrophic explosion erupts from the saint's position, tearing through a nearby building and shattering it completely. The force of the blast throws the collector violently backward, sending him tumbling through the air amidst a storm of debris. At the epicenter of the detonation, the saint is utterly consumed by the destructive energy she unleashed. He crashes to the ground, groaning in pain. His defensive skills, sturdy LV.30 and barrier LV.30, barely kept him from death's door. Struggling to his knees amidst the rubble, he stares at the widespread destruction, muttering in disbelief. His eyes fix on the tattered remnants of the saint's clothes. He realizes with horror that she must have used a high-level spell to self-destruct. He is aghast at such fanaticism, wondering why his sister would keep such a person by her side in her plan to conquer the world. From the edge of the chaos, a cloaked figure watches silently as panicked villagers scramble through the wreckage. The observer remains perfectly still, their gaze fixed on the scene. The woman, another of the sisters' companions, allows a small, cold smile to cross her lips. She thinks to herself that it's a shame the saint died, acknowledging her strength, but concludes that it was, after all, her wish. She coolly observed the aftermath, her thoughts turning to the saint's final act. It was, in her mind, a noble end, dying for one Isama. With her observation complete, she turned and walked away, her dark cloak billowing in the wind as she disappeared over the crest of a hill, leaving the devastation behind. While eating, the collector reflects on the skills he acquired from the saint. He finds the combination of charm, allure, and seduction at level 7, paired with insensitivity at level 5, to be a surprising and peculiar set. He muses that reality is stranger than fiction. While many skill combinations exist, like loud voice with psychology or lightning magic with insensitivity, he had never imagined one quite like the saint's. A thought strikes him. He should test it. He glances at his own reflection, confirming that he now possesses the exact same skill set. Driven by curiosity, he decides to activate the skills to see what happens. Deciding he has pondered enough, he calls out to Samaire, the waitress. Startled by his sudden address, she turns to him, and he confirms that he sees no noticeable change in his own appearance. He leans in close, his face just inches from a blushing Samaire's. With an unervingly smooth demeanor, he asks for the bill and his backpack. He then offers a charming, closed-eye smile and thanks her for the meal. Samaire is completely captivated, her eyes wide and sparkling with adoration as she stares at him. She stammers, flustered, as she presents the bill. Internally, her thoughts race. She wonders why she's calling him Samaire-san, then notices for the first time how his shirt is unbuttoned and how he smells appealingly like men's cologne. As he turns to leave, a dazed Samaire pleads for him to come again. The collector looks back, confused by her intense reaction, just as the list of his active skills, charm, allure, seduction, and insensitivity, flashes in his mind. He walks away in a panic, realizing his grave error. He had forgotten to deactivate the skills. Behind him, Samaire is left clutching her chest, wondering what just happened to her. In a world where skills can be bought and sold, the collector, having tasked Samaire with intelligence gathering, decides to continue his business. He reflects on his own information-gathering skills, such as eavesdropping, but feels insecure, doubting his ability to use them effectively without practical experience. Feeling self-conscious as he walks down the street, he resolves to test his eavesdropping LV.30 skill on a passing couple. As he concentrates, a voice from behind startles him. An elderly woman in clerical robes asks what he is doing. Caught off guard, the collector stammers an apology and asks if he appeared suspicious. Her expression softens into a gentle smile. Holding a book close, she informs him that the Lord sees even the smallest of deeds. He recognizes her as a priest. Nearby, two young boys watch the scene unfold, snickering to each other that an adult is getting scolded. His gaze drifts to the building behind her, a church. The sight brings back unpleasant memories. It was this institution that branded him as worthless when he was young, and he holds no fondness for it. Unaware of his inner thoughts, the priest cheerfully notes that the church is open to all as a place of rest. The collector, however, silently affirms that he would rather not enter. She then offers to have his skills appraised at the church. He quickly declines, stating he has work to do collecting skills and must be on his way. His mention of collecting skills piques her curiosity. A wave of panic washes over the collector as he realizes that, from the perspective of a servant of God, the act of trading skills must be considered utterly blasphemous. Desperate to escape, he dismisses his own words and begins to walk away, thinking he must leave before he gets scolded again. The priest, however, calls out, raising a hand and asking him to wait. He attempts to dismiss the priest, assuming her interest is merely a sermon, but she stops him. She insists that this is not about her role in the church, but a personal matter. Grabbing his arm to prevent his departure, she asks to discuss something with him. Realizing she won't be deterred, he agrees and follows her into the priest's living quarters behind the church. Once inside, she apologizes for the late hour. The collector, now seated, remains wary. He wonders aloud what business a stern priest could possibly have with a skill collector like him, struggling to formulate how to ask. The priest asks if he also collects skills that are considered unworthy before God. The collector is taken aback. To expedite the process, she asks to use her appraisal skill, which he agrees to. Her own appraisal is revealed to be a high level 30. The appraisal results flash through her mind. Alongside skills like Reason LV.20 and Appraisal LV.8, one stands out with an extreme value, Libido LV.20. The collector stares in disbelief. He stammers, then asks for confirmation. It's the libido skill she wants to deal with. She confirms it, explaining that while libido is a common skill, her level is extreme. She notes that he must have incredible self-control, as even level 5 is considered high, and her level 20 would normally lead to outright criminality. Overcome with shame, the priest cries out that it is disgraceful for a cleric to be so indecent, admitting she couldn't confide in anyone else. The collector calmly reassures her that such requests are common and advises her to speak more quietly if she wishes to maintain secrecy. He smiles, now understanding her desperation. He finds an unexpected turn of events from someone who appears so pure. His professional composure seems to intimidate the flustered priest. The collector explains that while the libido skill is popular among all ages, purchasing it at level 20 would exceed his current budget. He proposes returning another day to complete the transaction, a suggestion the relieved priest readily accepts. He listens as the priest expresses her relief, explaining that she will no longer have to suffer. She reveals that since a certain person came to the church, her own libido level has been constantly rising. His thoughts are interrupted by the sound of hurried footsteps and a woman's voice calling out. She addresses the priest as Father and asks if everything is all right, having heard loud voices. The collector wonders if this is the person the priest was referring to. The source of the voice reveals herself to be a young nun, who enters the room looking flushed and out of breath, stating she heard them talking. The priest, startled, stammers an apology and quickly explains to the sister that she was merely discussing an order for church equipment with a merchant. The collector silently notes her clerical attire. Apologizing for the interruption, the nun takes a step forward but suddenly loses her footing. With a small cry, she stumbles and falls heavily forward. Her fall sends her directly into the collector, who is caught off guard. As she presses against him, she offers a breathy thank you. His suspicion is immediately aroused, and his appraisal skill triggers, revealing a startling list of the nun's abilities: charm, allure, and arousal, all at level 7, alongside insensitivity at level 5. The nun pulls back slightly, a sly, knowing look on her face as she murmurs her understanding. The collector is aghast, realizing the potent and deliberate nature of her skill set. The combination is so provocative, he thinks, that even a succubus wouldn't be so overt. Later, after the nun has departed, the priest confirms the collector's suspicion. That was indeed the woman she spoke of. The collector connects the pieces, stating that the nun's skills must be the reason the priest's own desires became so intense. The priest, surprised he also saw the nun's skills, affirms his conclusion, recalling her own shock when the young woman first joined the church. Inside the church, the head cleric reflects on the young nun's situation. Before joining them, she was troubled by perverts, a problem that only lessened with the sanctuary of the church. The cleric realizes the nun's parents must have hidden the truth about her skills. The worst part is that the nun is unaware of her own power and insensitivity that makes her oblivious to the way she excites others. Even the church's own appraisal service treads carefully around such negative skills. Her thoughts are interrupted by a knock at her door. The cleric turns as the nun enters, asking what she needs. The nun explains that she forgot to mention something important. She has been training every day to become a proper sister. Her face alight with excitement, she continues, telling the initially pleased cleric that she wants to test if she has finally learned the appraisal skill. She declares her plan to try it on her own skills first, and if it works, she will use it on the believers as well. She cheerfully confirms that while her only skill is insensitivity, she believes appraisal has now been added. The cleric's expression shifts to horror, shouting in disbelief at the nun's intention to appraise herself. Oblivious to the cleric's panic, the nun gives a playful wink and wishes them a good night before departing. The cleric is left aghast, realizing that if the nun discovers the true nature of her skills, it will be a catastrophe. 1 week later, the collector arrives at the church. He has his payment ready, having come to purchase the priest's libido skill. As he calls out a greeting, he is met with an apology and told that it is not a good time. His arrival coincides with chaos. The cleric is frantic, crying out that the sister is gone. She has been missing since morning, and other nuns can be seen searching the streets in a panic. All that was left behind on her bed was a single letter. It was a confession stating, "I am a disgrace as a believer, and that she must be punished." Standing outside, the collector quickly deduces the situation. The nun must have learned about her own skills. He decides that finding her is the priority and that buying skills can wait. He reflects that, although he doesn't share her beliefs, she was a truly devout follower. He resolves to track her down himself. Activating his skills, presence detection, and smell, he scans the surroundings. His senses point him toward a thick, gloomy forest up ahead, a place so forbidding that no one would normally enter, making it the perfect hiding spot, unless she is there for another reason. He and the priest rush into the forest, the elderly cleric urging him to hurry, warning that the situation could turn dire. Deeper within the woods, the nun stands beneath a tree, a coarse rope fashioned into a noose in her hands. She trembles, begging God for forgiveness for what she is about to do. Just as she slips the noose over her head, the collector bursts through the foliage, his presence detection skill having led him straight to her. He cries out her title, his voice filled with alarm. He acts instantly, unleashing a blade of wind magic that severs the rope. At the same time, the priest arrives, lunging forward and pleading with the nun not to follow through. Now on the ground and restrained by the priest, the nun struggles frantically. She cries out that she had no idea she possessed such filthy skills and begs to be let go. In her despair, she tears the front of her habit, proclaiming that she cannot continue living, as her existence is not fitting in the eyes of God. The priest's voice cuts through the anguish. "No," she says firmly. "If you are unworthy, then so am I." The collector then breaks the heavy silence, pointing out that the nun's clothes are torn and it is quite indecent. The abrupt, mundane comment makes her look up in confusion. Seizing the moment, the priest instructs the nun to use her appraisal skill on her. She explains that while the nun's level is too low to see skill levels, it can see the skills themselves, revealing her own list: libido, reason, appraisal, psychology, and loud voice. She tells the nun she is not the only one with tainted skills. To prove her point, the priest calmly states that her own libido skill is level 20. The nun can only stare, her eyes wide with shock at the confession. She looks up at the priest, who asks if being touched by a person like her is frightening. As the collector watches, he realizes the priest's libido skill is at a dangerous level and that he must intervene. The priest, however, continues her confession, apologizing for frightening the nun and admitting that she, too, is a tainted human, revealing her own reason skill is at level 20. The priest explains that she tried suppressing this desire with her reason skill and had even considered relying on the merchant to erase it entirely. But now, looking down at the nun, she declares that she will no longer rely on him. The collector can only watch, confused by this sudden change of heart. Her voice rises with conviction as she proclaims that all skills are blessings from God. Even tainted skills, she insists, must be accepted and overcome, for that is the trial God has bestowed upon them. Following her declaration, she extends a hand to the stunned nun. She gently asks if they can overcome this trial together, with her help. The nun can only whisper the priest's title in response. With a surge of emotion, the nun firmly grasps the priest's hand. Tears welling in her eyes, she agrees, admitting that she was wrong. A beatific light seems to surround them as the nun, her spirit renewed, pledges to strive, as the priest says, as a fellow servant of God. Watching from a distance, the collector thinks to himself that the scene feels like a moment from a sacred mural, though he dryly notes that the illusion is somewhat broken by the fact that the priest's back is soaked in sweat. He processes the outcome. With the priest and nun now united in their cause, he realizes his opportunity has passed. The negotiation to collect the libido skill has failed. As he turns to leave, the now cheerful nun thanks the merchant Sama for his efforts. Dejected, the collector walks away, wondering what the point of his ordeal was. He continues on his way as the priest and nun call out, inviting him to visit the church again. He reflects that, despite his failure, he somehow feels a bit closer to the church than he did before. In a world where skills can be bought and sold, the young man, known as the collector, sits in a tavern. He is a merchant of these very abilities. Across from him, a young woman explains that she heard about his unique knowledge from Samire and has come to consult him about a problem involving skills. She begins to explain her situation, stating that she recently inherited a piece of land from a relative. However, she adds with a worried expression, there is something strange about the property. The collector listens as she elaborates on the strangeness. Anyone who approaches the land begins to feel unwell. Furthermore, there are rumors from neighbors that a homeless person has moved onto the property. The client believes this person possesses a strange skill and wants him to do something about it. She bows her head apologetically for such a request. The collector thoughtfully considers the mention of a homeless individual, but cautions her that as a mere merchant, he cannot guarantee he can resolve the issue. As he contemplates, Samire interjects, explaining that the client is her friend and is deeply troubled. She pleads that the collector is the only one she can rely on. He realizes the personal nature of the request, also noting the potential bonus of acquiring a rare skill in the process. Her plea is effective. He agrees to accept the job and asks to be shown the place. The client thanks him profusely, adding that the location is a bit far from here. With the matter settled, the trio sets off from the town. The collector, now equipped with a backpack, walks with a determined look on his face. After their journey, they arrive at a plot of land overlooking a small village. A dilapidated stone structure stands in the center. The client announces their arrival. Upon arrival, the collector immediately senses an oppressive weight in the atmosphere. Samire agrees, noting how heavy the place feels. He turns his attention to the crumbling structure and asks what it is. The client explains the ruin was already there when she inherited the land, and that the feeling of sickness is strongest near the tower. She wishes she could demolish it. Samire grows fearful, realizing someone must truly be living there. The collector grimly confirms her suspicion is most likely correct. He focuses his senses, his presence detection skill confirming the suspicion. Something is indeed living inside the ruined tower. Turning to his companions, he asks the client what kind of problems people experience when they get close. The young girl explains that she and her neighbors have been affected, but they can't see anything at all. Samire expresses her surprise. The client elaborates, recounting how people started seeing soldiers that shouldn't exist, or even huge birds they had never seen before. Hearing this, Samire immediately suggests it might be a hallucination skill. He considers her theory. A hallucination skill is common, he acknowledges, but notes that it usually only causes the user to see illusions, not project them onto others. However, it is known that at high levels, the skill can project the user's hallucinated world onto others as well. Samire connects the pieces. Since the property was left unattended, someone activating hallucination must have settled there. She worries about how they can even approach the tower with illusions involved, and questions what would happen if they managed to make the person leave. The collector decides to handle it himself. He tells Samire and the client to head back, explaining that his own skills should be able to deal with illusions. He adds that he might even be able to buy the skill from its user. The two girls can only watch, concerned as he prepares to go. Samire hesitates, asking if he will truly be all right on his own. With a determined look, she insists that she wants to help. He smiles kindly, touched by her words. He reassures her that her concern is more than enough and that he will be fine. As he walks away, Samire watches him go, moved by his kindness. Now alone, he proceeds with caution, activating his presence detection skill once more and increasing its sensitivity as he steps carefully toward the tower. He steps out from the path and into a wide, barren clearing within the forest, continuing his solitary advance toward the tower. The environment shifts around him. He realizes that as soon as he entered this part of the woods, it transformed into a forest filled with strange, oversized, and unsettling flora. Through the dense foliage, his gaze falls upon a magnificent, fully intact castle, its pristine walls and towers standing where only ruins should be. A bead of sweat forms as he recognizes the structure. The castle feels familiar, but he knows this area should contain a ruined tower. The sheer detail of the illusion is unnerving. He recalls his knowledge of the region's history. Long ago, this land was a patchwork of several small kingdoms, all of which have since been absorbed into the great Kyukshiv nation. Connecting the pieces, he identifies the location as the former site of the Rapi kingdom, which fell 5 centuries ago. The vividness of the scene makes him question if this is a mere hallucination or if he has somehow traveled back in time. He dismisses the idea of time travel, reasoning that only a single, unique skill could achieve such a feat. This must be an illusion. He wonders who could be producing such a powerful hallucination, and a fleeting image of the saint flashes in his mind. Suddenly, his path is blocked by 2 armored soldiers who materialize from the woods. They demand to know what he is doing there, but he understands they, too, are merely illusions. One of the soldiers declares that he is not allowed to be there, leveling a blade at his throat. The collector is stunned that the illusion can hold a conversation. As he starts to offer an apology, the soldiers advance. They surround him, accusingly asking if he is a remnant of the Rapi kingdom. Confused by their words, the collector insists they are mistaken, explaining that he simply has business with someone in the castle. He stood surrounded, the armored figures regarding him with open hostility. One of the soldiers declared that a commoner like him having business at the castle was inherently suspicious. The commanding voice then gave a decisive order: seize him and throw him into the dungeon. The collector's mind reeled at the word, a flicker of confusion crossing his face as he processed the sudden escalation. His initial shock at the threat gave way to a sudden, opportunistic thought. As the shadow of a halberd fell across him, he realized that being captured might actually be the perfect way to get inside the castle. Acting on the command, a soldier lunged forward, grabbing the collector firmly by the back of his vest. With the castle looming in the distance, he was unceremoniously apprehended. A drop of water echoes through the oppressive silence of a stone dungeon. Rows of iron-barred cells line the damp corridor, disappearing into the darkness. Inside one such cell, a young man sits on the cold floor, his gaze fixed on the cell opposite his own. Moments earlier, he had been thrown unceremoniously to the ground by a fully armored guard. As the heavy cell door clanged shut and the guard's footsteps receded, the boy allowed himself a small, internal acknowledgement of success. He was in. He remains on the floor, feeling the phantom sensation of ropes on his wrists and the lingering ache from being struck. It is a powerful illusion, so realistic he wonders if the source must be nearby. From the darkness, a voice calls out, "Hey kid." The boy looks up, addressing the prisoner in the opposing cell. He explains that the boy's own cell is for minor offenders, meaning he'll likely be released in 2 weeks. He then adds a grim clarification, "unlike us," while noting that the other figures milling about the prison are merely illusions. From the shadows of the other cell, 2 men in chains speak. One asks why the boy is talking to people on death row. The other states plainly that they are remnants of the Rapi kingdom. The name resonates with the boy. He recalls what the soldiers had said: Rapi, a small kingdom that fell 500 years ago. Its survivors were made slaves, but those deemed too dangerous or influential were locked away, here to be executed. A wave of gloom washes over him as he considers their fate, but his companion tells him not to be so gloomy. A third prisoner, a man with long, light-colored hair and an intense aura, speaks with authority. He reveals a list of his formidable skills, including a high-level hallucination ability. He declares that they are not simply waiting to die. They are biding their time, waiting for a chance to break out. The leader's defiant words cut through the boy's momentary despair. "We lost the war, but as long as we're alive, there's no way we're giving up." As the prisoner's declaration echoes in the dungeon, the boy's eyes widen with a sudden, sharp realization. He's found it. His gaze locks onto the long-haired man through the iron bars. This man, he understands with absolute certainty, is the source of the powerful hallucination blanketing the prison. He and his fellow prisoners sat in the dim light of their cell, observed by the young collector who had just joined their ranks. The boy considered his options. He could try to convince the man to move on, or he could negotiate to purchase his powerful hallucination skill. Either way, he concluded it would be best to earn his trust first. Putting his plan into motion, he addressed the leader directly, asking if he was also one of the remaining people of Rapi. The man looked up, his gaze heavy, and confirmed that he was a former general. He continued, explaining that he was not just any soldier, but a hero of his country, the strongest in the army. A vision of his past self flashed through his mind, clad in shining armor, sword drawn, having cut down countless beasts and men in battle. Despite the man's current state, the boy could still see a fierce fighting spirit in his eyes. He asked why that fire remained. The general's expression soured as he retorted that he was now nothing more than a death row prisoner, lost and swallowed by the enemy. But then his voice regained its strength. The reason his spirit hadn't broken, he explained, was because he had too many things left undone. His mind drifted back to a time before the fall, when he stood with his men, planning their next move around a map. They had been tasked with a critical mission. Their orders were clear: to subjugate the high-level beasts that were threatening the kingdom's northern defenses. He remembered the weight of their duty, answering the hopes of the citizens who cheered for them as he rode out to protect their homes. And then, his memory settled on a particular moment at a noble's estate, where he met two young children who would become central to his unfinished business. His memory continues, showing him standing in the opulent hall of the noble's estate. A sound catches his attention, and he turns his head with a questioning grunt. He sees the two children, the boy flustered and apologizing. From behind a pillar, a small girl with dark hair peeks out. The general addresses her, asking if she is the daughter of the house. Before he can get proper answer, the girl darts forward and grabs his cape. Her brother tries to call her back, but she ignores him, looking up at the general with an intense gaze and asking a single, direct question. "Are you strong?" The boy rushes to apologize, calling his sister unusual, but the general simply confirms that he is. He recounts his feats, slaying over 10 advanced monsters and even taking an enemy general's head. The girl listens, her expression unreadable. Her gaze remains unwavering. After a moment of silence, she poses another, far more chilling question. "Could you kill me as well?" The general looks down at the child who wants him to kill her. He tells her that while it would be easy, she shouldn't be in such a rush to die. He advises her to grow up first and experience the wider world. He then kneels to her level, making a promise. He cannot agree to kill her, but he will come to meet her again. Taking this as an opening, she asks if he will come to kill her once she is grown. The memory of this strange pact, made on a whim, lingers. The flashback dissolves, returning to the grim present. The general stands alone in his cell, the weight of his history pressing down on him. He states with cold finality that everything was taken from them. Listening from the corridor, the collector is struck by a contradiction. He knows from historical records that the Rapi kingdom was defeated in a war 5 centuries ago. Yet, the general speaks of it as if it were a recent tragedy. His confusion is shattered by the general's sudden, furious roar. The prisoner vows that he will escape, no matter the cost, and that he will restore Rapi to its former glory. The collector can only watch, bewildered by the man's impossible conviction. He stood before the chained general, his expression somber, telling the man the truth would be painful, but he knew it was something that had to be done. His resolve was set, recalling the events that led them to this point. The general had been utterly bewildered when his ropes and the cell door suddenly came unlocked. The boy, accompanied by his companion Samire, had calmly instructed the general to step within the range of his status resistance skill. Ignoring the general's confused shouts, he and Samire had simply walked out of the now unlocked prison, leaving the man behind the bars as the boy's status resistance ability activated. They led him from the illusory prison to the top of a ruined stone tower, revealing a view not of a grand kingdom, but of a quiet, humble village. The scene before them was one of simple, rural life, a stark contrast to the sprawling capital the general remembered. As the general stared, lost, the boy delivered the devastating truth. He explained that the Rapi kingdom fell 500 years ago, and this land was now part of Kenyukshiv, the continent's largest nation. He gently suggested that the general likely died without realizing it, his lingering regrets binding his soul to his skill. The general could only stammer that it was impossible. The boy's presence was no accident. He had been sought by a worried young client, who, accompanied by Samire, explained that she had asked him, the landowner, to investigate because things that shouldn't exist were appearing in the area. All the while, the general's denial continued, a faint whisper of impossibility. He pressed on, confirming the general's fears. The soldiers, the castle, the prison, it had all been an illusion. The weight of this revelation crushed the general, who whispered in despair that there was nothing left from his era anymore. The general's spirit finally broke. He collapsed to his knees in anguish, lamenting that all he had ever wanted was to protect his people, but his own skill, a level 28 hallucination, had become his curse. The boy watched him, his expression filled with empathy. As the general's form began to crumble like dried earth, the boy made a quiet vow to free him from his curse. He questioned what he, a mere skill collector, could truly accomplish, but resolved that, at the very least, he had to try. He looks upon the fading general and makes his offer plain. He wishes to buy the hallucination skill. The spectral warrior, his form wavering, can only express his disbelief at the proposal. In response to the spirit's confusion, the boy explains that he possesses a skill allowing him to purchase other skills. He runs a business collecting unwanted abilities, and if the general's skill caused him pain, he will take it. He asserts that any skill can be useful, depending on its application. The general processes this, murmuring that the boy intends to put his cursed skill to good use. The protagonist notes that it is because of the general's own skill that he wears such a sorrowful expression, even at the very end. He then clarifies a condition. His power requires a price. Since he cannot give money to a spirit, he would like to offer payment in another way. The general, now understanding the boy's sincerity, seems to accept. In that case, the general makes one request. He recalls a strange little girl to whom he promised he would visit once she grew up, a promise he could not keep. He laments that anyone from his era is surely long dead by now. The protagonist asks for the girl's name, promising to look into her fate. The general wonders aloud if she was able to live a life without regrets and asks the boy to find her grave and deliver a message. "I'm sorry, I couldn't keep my promise." The spirit reveals her name was Kaitori, and that she was the daughter of a noble in the Rapi kingdom. The information visibly stuns the protagonist. The name echoes in his mind, Kaitori. An image of a grand, vine-covered mansion behind an iron gate fills his thoughts. A vision of the past flashes before him. Kaitori stands beneath a balcony when a potted plant suddenly tips over and crashes down upon her head. She sits on the ground amidst the debris, seemingly unharmed. She muses to herself that she died first thing at dawn and that the skill collector will scold her again. Below her, a new truth is revealed. Kaitori, Immortality LV.1. In a land haunted by a lingering spirit, the collector stood before the ghost of a general. This quest, undertaken at the request of Sumayor's friend, was reaching its conclusion. The general, his form translucent, made a final plea, asking the boy to find a woman named Kaitori-san. He implored the collector to tell her he was sorry, a message to be delivered, even if only to her gravestone. The boy solemnly accepted the charge. With the promise made, the trade was accepted. In exchange for freeing the spirit from his self-imposed illusion and delivering the message, the collector's own abilities were greatly enhanced. He acquired hallucination, advanced swordsmanship, toughness, quick-step, and super strength. His duty fulfilled, the general's soul, bound to the mortal plane for 500 years, finally found peace and ascended to the heavens. His task in the haunted lands now complete, he turned and began walking toward the nearby settlement, his pack feeling no heavier despite the new weight of his promise. He rejoined his companions, Sumayor and her friend. Sumayor greeted him with a bright, relieved smile, while the other girl looked on, her expression a mixture of awe and gratitude. The client pointed toward the gates of a fortified town in the distance, exclaiming with joy that it was true. The land was safe to enter once more. She turned to the collector, thanking him profusely for saving them. When she asked if he was certain he didn't want a reward, he simply smiled and replied that gaining new skills was payment enough. His thoughts, however, were already on his next task, delivering the message to Kaitori-san. As he pondered this, he overheard a passing conversation, a rumor about an old mansion in the forest, a place where the undead were said to dwell. His attention was immediately drawn to a large, imposing house on a nearby hill. He pointed it out, just as his client nervously asked if the stories about undead were just rumors. Suddenly, a horrifying scene unfolded within the mansion's grounds. A young woman with long, light hair was forced over a chopping block as an executioner brought a heavy axe down upon her neck. The collector and his companions could only watch in shock, the boy gasping in disbelief as he witnessed a death. But it was not a death. With a sickening snap, the girl's head reattached itself to her neck. Blood splattered, but her eyes opened, glowing with an unnatural light. It was an undead. It was Kaitori. She tilted her head, a flicker of curiosity on her face as she surveyed her surroundings. The undead woman stands, seemingly unbothered, as a list of her inherent abilities becomes apparent. Immortality, eternal youth, oblivion, and super strength among them. Noticing the onlookers, she casually remarks on their presence. The protagonist, recovering from his shock, greets her, "Kaitori-san. Good day." She responds in kind, acknowledging that it has been a long time since she last saw the collector. Her casual greeting does little to explain the scene they had just witnessed. The boy recalls the strange visit, standing before the gates of her large, isolated mansion, and her offhand comment that the execution was more intense than usual, followed by the bizarre admission that she had taken her own head by mistake. He struggles to process this reality, a bead of sweat tracing its way down his temple. This is Kaitori-san, a woman over 5 centuries old, whose appearance is preserved by her immortality. As she asks for a moment's patience, the dark stain of blood on her neck serves as a stark reminder of what just occurred. While he waits, Sumayor points out that Kaitori's clothes and hair are covered in blood and suggests she should change. Kaitori waves off the suggestion with a detached air, stating that it's fine since she will just die again soon anyway and receives no visitors. Despite her words, Samire begins to gently clean the blood from Kiyori's neck with a cloth. "My apologies, as usual," Kiyori murmurs, leaning into the care. The protagonist watches, realizing that this bizarre routine is akin to nursing an elderly person. Once she's cleaned up, they sit down to talk. Kiyori notes that his visit is unusual and asks what brings him. Puzzled, she wonders who could possibly be sending her a message, given that she lives in total seclusion. The boy explains his purpose. He has come to deliver a message from the spirit of a Rapi kingdom general. He relays the general's final words, a ghostly image of a uniformed man appearing as he speaks. He said, "I'm sorry I couldn't keep my promise." The message hangs in the air, but it doesn't seem to spark immediate recognition. Kiyori tilts her head, murmuring the name Rapi, as if trying to place a distant memory. Seeing her confusion, the protagonist asks directly if she remembers the general. She turns her gaze towards the window, a wistful look on her face. "I'm sorry," she says softly. "My memories of the past are mostly gone." She explains that she had long believed everyone who lived in her era had already left this world. Despite the lost memories, a gentle smile touches her lips as she faces him again. She thanks the collector for delivering the message, admitting that simply hearing of a familiar face after so long is enough to bring her happiness. She kneels in her garden, a basket of freshly picked produce beside her. As a token of her gratitude, she offers the collector some vegetables, noting that he seems to be growing quite a variety himself, even if his blood is scattered all over the place. She observes that he seems to be having fun. He confirms this, explaining that it's all because she traded a skill to him. She hums to herself, remarking that her blood was a really good fertilizer. The collector silently pleads with her not to refer to it so casually. His mind drifts back through time, about 300 years ago, to when he first met her. He remembers that back then, she was suffering far more than she is in her current state. Sometime later, the collector finds himself lost, wandering through a dark forest with only a lantern to light his path. He worries that undead might appear, but then reflects that compared to the day he was separated from his sister, they don't seem so frightening. His thoughts are cut short by a sudden, loud bang that rings out from the darkness. Startled by the noise, he looks up and finds himself before a tall, wrought iron gate. Peering through the bars, he sees a large mansion looming in the night, wondering if that was the source of the sound. The young collector's eyes widen in shock as he stumbles upon a collapsed figure. It is the woman known as the Saint, lying motionless on the ground. A grim realization dawns on him. She has failed to die again. His appraisal skill confirms her identity and reveals the source of her curse. The unique skill, immortality. The boy is stunned by the revelation. Nearby, the woman despairs, lamenting that even after hundreds of years, she cannot comprehend her ability. Overwhelmed by an eternity of memories, she confesses her exhaustion and her futile wish to die. Later, at a wrought iron gate, she regards him with a weary gaze, surprised to meet someone who can perceive skills. She asks who he is, mistaking him for a lost child, before pointedly asking if he, too, desires death. Flustered, the boy struggles to respond. An idea suddenly strikes him. He declares himself a collector of unwanted skills and makes a bold offer. He will buy her immortality through trade. However, the transaction fails. He realizes with a jolt that immortality is a unique skill, something his ability is not yet capable of acquiring. The trade is rejected. He tries to explain, reminding her that he is the skill collector they were just discussing, but she simply stares blankly. Her memory of their brief conversation has already vanished, and she asks again who he is. The boy understands then. Her mind is so full from an unnaturally long life that new memories cannot hold. Seeing her clear suffering, he considers his own level 1 trade skill, convinced that somewhere in his collection, there must be another skill that can help her. The memory of that day concludes with her success. The saint, now composed and clear-eyed, thanks him. The oblivion skill he sold her allowed her to finally organize the chaotic memories in her mind, a testament to its power now at level 15. Returning to the present, the boy explains the nature of that particular power. He details how oblivion is a negative skill that worsens memory loss, but at higher levels, it grants the user the ability to choose which memories to erase. He mentions having sold this same skill to another acquaintance, Kiyori. He finishes his story to Samire with an apology, admitting his trade skill is still immature. A memory of Kiyori surfaces. Though her life is easier, she still truly wishes to die one day. He reflects on his limitations. At level 1, his trade skill cannot acquire unique skills, which is why he also failed to obtain another powerful ability, returned by death. He looks at his companion with renewed determination, vowing that he will not give up. He promises to raise his trade level so that one day he can buy her immortality. In response, Kiyori's expression is tinged with sadness as she addresses him as collector. She notes that even after he sold her the oblivion skill, he continues to visit, still hoping to acquire immortality. She gently reminds him of the stark difference between them. Unlike her, his time is finite, and he will eventually die. Her words sting. He internally rejects the idea that he is burdening himself for her sake, thinking that wasn't what he wanted her to say. He clarifies in his own mind that his desire to raise his trade level is something he is doing for himself, a way to catch up to his sister. Pushing those thoughts aside, he puffs his cheeks with resolve and speaks directly to her. He declares that he made his promise with conviction and vows that he will not die until he can finally buy her immortality. His intensity leaves her momentarily stunned. "Are you serious?" she asks. He reaffirms his promise, insisting he won't go on alone and pleading with her not to say things that sound like she's given up. He wants to spend his days with her until she is finally able to die. Her composure finally breaks. A deep blush spreads across her face as she wipes away a tear, telling him to stop his sweet words before she dies of embarrassment. He is taken aback, wondering if she just made an immortality joke, while also acknowledging that improving his trade skill is for his own benefit as well. Seeing her flustered state, he changes the subject, suggesting they visit the town for once. He mentions a new restaurant that's supposed to be good, but adds that they can go another time if she isn't feeling up to it. Still blushing, Kaitori quickly agrees to go, just for today. With that, he cheerfully decides they should head out. Meanwhile, at a local establishment, Samaya is working when the saint asks her what's wrong. Samaya admits she was just thinking that the collector hasn't visited today. The saint and a nearby elderly woman immediately begin to tease her, asking if she misses him and wants him to visit, which Samaya vehemently denies. Despite her denial, her thoughts drift to the collector. She recalls how he recently helped a friend with their troubles and remembers hearing that he might have even assisted someone who possessed a negative skill. She continues to reflect on his character, thinking of him as dependable and considerate while picturing him helping various people. A warm blush spreads across her cheeks as she comes to a quiet realization. So I admire him. Her cheeks flush with a happy realization. Samaya clasps her hands together, thinking to herself that Collector San is someone she can truly rely on. Her reverie is broken by the innkeeper, who notices her expression shift and asks why she suddenly looks so disappointed. At that moment, the bell on the door chimes as the collector himself enters. Samaya's face instantly brightens, and she greets him with a loud, enthusiastic welcome. He seems slightly taken aback by her energy, muttering about her being the landlady. His attention, however, is not on her. He stands beside another young woman, Kaitori, who surveys the room. She asks if this is the place he recommended, then casually warns him not to die by accident and cause trouble. From behind the counter, Samaya stares, her mind reeling. Who? She wonders, is this girl with him? The collector arrives at an eatery with a companion, Kaitori. The waitress, Samaya, greets him but is taken aback by his guest, asking who she is. Internally, Samaya marvels at the newcomer's appearance, noting her antique dress and long, silver hair. The air itself seems to herald a new event, the season for digging potatoes. Startled by her own thoughts, Samaya stammers for a moment before confirming that yes, they have seats available. She gestures them inside. As they settle in, she can't contain her curiosity and asks about the person with him, remarking that it's unusual since the collector is always alone. He casually explains that the woman is an old acquaintance of his named Kaitori. Kaitori looks at Samaya with a placid expression and declares that the collector is always in her care. Flustered by the statement, Samaya quickly introduces herself. The claim leaves Samaya pondering what sort of care Kaitori provides. Wiping blood? Washing clothes? The collector overhears her muttering and clarifies that, actually, he is the one looking after Kaitori. Watching them from afar, Samaya observes the collector and has a simple realization. He seems so happy. After the meal, Kaitori expresses her satisfaction, telling the collector it was delicious and that they should return. He smiles, glad she enjoyed it, then turns to Samaya, noting the time and telling her she can leave now. Samaya agrees, mentioning that she has farm work to do. The collector's attention is caught by her words, a thought beginning to form. He turns to Kaitori, suddenly animated, and asks if she has ever harvested potatoes, exclaiming that it's quite fun. He explains that this year's harvest is abundant and they're shorthanded. Surprised, Kaitori agrees. The collector then asks Samaya if she has potato fields. Kaitori confirms that she does, admitting she loses track of time while doing it. The collector connects the dots, realizing that her hobby must be gardening in her yard. He turns to Samaya and hesitantly asks if she would like to join them. Kaitori reacts with surprise, remarking that she hadn't expected someone who looks so elegant to be interested in such an activity. The collector, however, agrees readily, noting that they have no other plans. At this, Kaitori pipes up, declaring she'd like to help with the potato harvesting, much to Samaya's shock. Though taken aback, Samaya clasps her hands together and admits that their help would be a great relief, though she still seems to be making sure Kaitori is serious about the offer. And so, the group makes their way to a modest house fronted by large, neatly organized fields of potato plants. Now dressed in practical overalls, Samaya thanks them for their assistance. The collector, carrying a basket brimming with potatoes, replies that it's no trouble and that moving his body like this is good for him sometimes. As they work, Samaya explains that her mother is out and her siblings are at school. The collector glances towards some children in the distance, realizing who they must be, as Samaya promises to treat him and Kaitori to some potatoes later as a reward. His attention is then pulled away by Kaitori, who calls his name while holding up an impressively large potato. She tells him not to just stand around and to keep digging, reminding him that she is, in fact, working hard. The collector can only marvel at her, exclaiming that she's amazing. Samaya agrees, adding that while his own strength is considerable, he can't match Kiyori's pace. A brief assessment reveals the source. Kiyori possesses super strength LV.20 and cultivation LV.5. Samaya observes that Kiyori seems completely used to this kind of work. From the field, Kiyori simply confirms, of course. She then kneels, holding up a freshly unearthed potato plant, and proudly declares to them both that this particular potato was her own creation. Her cryptic claim about creating the potato hangs in the air, followed by another odd statement. Potato flowers were prettier when they used to be white. The collector and Samaya can only react with stunned disbelief, the boy stammering to ask what she means by used to be. Before they can process her words, a massive, winged monster descends from the sky, landing with a crash upon the wooden cart and its load of potatoes. The creature lets out a horrifying screech. Startled, the collector asks Samaya if monsters are common in the area. She cries out that they normally are not, but theorizes that the scent from pulling up so many potatoes at once must have attracted it. He yells for Samaya to get back, but Kiyori steps forward with unnerving composure. Monsters, she states calmly. I shall handle this. The collector recalls her list of skills: immortality, super strength, and pain nullification, and thinks she will likely be fine, though a sense of unease about how she will fight still creeps in. The monster lunges, its beak piercing straight through Kiyori's midsection. As the others watch in horror, she remains standing, completely unfazed. Her immortality LV.1 skill is displayed as she internally remarks that it's too bad for the creature. She cannot die. Samaya screams, but Kiyori calmly declares that she is fine, without a scratch. Activating her super strength LV.20, she grabs the monster by its beak and, with a surge of raw power, rips the creature in half, its body disintegrating into nothing. Immediately after the threat is gone, Samaya rushes to Kiyori's side, frantically dabbing at her dress with a cloth. She exclaims that the situation is not okay at all and asks if she is truly unhurt. Kiyori simply stands there, her expression unreadable, allowing the worried girl to tend to her. Inside the greenhouse, Samaya observes Kiyori, remarking that she is much like the skill collector. She continues, noting that while the collector and Kiyori have lived for different lengths of time, it's natural for them to be kind. Yet, she feels Kiyori's kindness towards her, a stranger she just met, is undeserved, as Samaya feels she has done nothing to earn it. Kiyori, with her arms crossed, firmly tells Samaya that her attitude of kindness is the same towards everyone, regardless of their abilities. Samaya looks up, touched by the statement. A plate of freshly cooked potatoes is set down, followed by a view of the house where they are staying. Inside, the three of them are seated at a table. The collector takes a bite and remarks that the potato is fluffy and delicious. He then turns to Kiyori, asking if she was the one who created this particular kind. Kiyori simply replies no. Surprised, Samaya asks if Kiyori is a farmer, to which Kiyori confirms that she is. She elaborates, explaining that she conducts modest research on skills, which provide a small income, but her savings from her past life as a noble are nearly depleted. Gardening, she adds, is just a hobby to pass the long centuries. She then recounts a time when, seeking a fortune, she brought the seeds of a potato she had cultivated to the agricultural guild. Continuing her story, Kiyori explains that the guild was astonished by her red flower potatoes, and as a result, they became incredibly popular. This confuses Samaya, who asks if potato flowers aren't normally red. Kiyori clarifies that they used to be white. She simply liked the white blossoms and chose to cultivate them, leading to the new variety. She continued her explanation, stating that her blood had been a really good fertilizer. Each time she died in her garden, she elaborated, her blood bathed the soil, and the potato blossoms turned red. The protagonist, stunned, realizes it wasn't a joke and demands to know what she means. He quickly connects the dots. If her blood, affected by her immortality skill, was the cause, it would explain not just the rare flower color, but also the potato's improved taste. At the same time, both he and Samaya realize the potato shares Kiyori's name. Samaya internally considers the grave danger they would be in if the world discovered the secret behind the potato's unique properties. Reacting to their shared realization, Samaya exclaims that it must not be a coincidence. Kiyori confirms this, explaining that when asked for a cultivar name, she said she had none, only that she had cultivated it. Consequently, they named it the Kiyori sweet potato. The protagonist attempts to console her, suggesting it's an honor to have a crop named after her. Kiyori, however, looks away, admitting she didn't expect the name to spread so far and quietly wishes they would change it. Seeing this exchange, Samaya gently chides the protagonist. She tells him he doesn't understand a maiden's heart, pointing out that while naming a flower after someone is lovely, naming a potato after them feels a bit less romantic. He becomes flustered and quickly apologizes, clarifying that he didn't mean it that way. He had thought his popularity among farmers was something she could be proud of. Observing his sincere apology, Samaya seems to relent, simply stating, very well. Hearing his earnest reasoning, Kiyori blushes slightly. She concedes that if he puts it that way, then perhaps it's not so bad after all. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of two children who announce they are home. One asks if the potato digging is finished, while the other points out the protagonist's presence. Samire smiles, welcoming back her brother and sister, Paji and Kasumi. The children's attention immediately shifts to the unfamiliar girl at the table. Kasumi points directly at Kiyori and asks who this big sister is. As the protagonist notes that the harvest is almost complete, Kiyori is visibly taken aback by the blunt question. She gracefully introduces herself as Kiyori, expressing her pleasure in meeting them. The children react with immediate excitement, with the younger girl, Kasumi, exclaiming that her name is the same as the sweet potato. Building on this connection, the siblings enthusiastically declare that they will call her Potato Wunshin, or Big Sister Potato. The new nickname leaves Kiyori momentarily speechless, surrounded by visions of sweet potatoes. The nickname hits her with unexpected force, her expression frozen in shock. Nearby, the collector and Samire watch her reaction with a mix of worry and slight amusement. He quickly steps in, chiding Paji and Kasumi for their rudeness. As Samire looks on apologetically, the collector internally reflects that even for someone with immortality, emotional wounds are real. Kiyori, for her part, silently wishes she could just change her name. As their visit to Samire's home concludes, the collector expresses his gratitude for the day. Samire replies that it was her pleasure. Before they part ways, Kasumi eagerly asks Kiyori to visit them again. Flustered but pleased by the invitation, Kiyori agrees that she will. The young girl then leans in close and whispers an apology for intruding on what she perceived as Kiyori's date. The implication sends a jolt of shock through Kiyori, while the collector, standing nearby, is left completely bewildered. He asks Kiyori what Kasumi had whispered to her, but she turns away, her face flushed, and curtly informs him that it is none of his business. As they walk through the town, a sharp voice cuts through the air. Ripley has caught up to them, demanding to know where the collector has been. She addresses him urgently, identifying herself as Mako-san, and insists he come with her immediately to deal with an unspecified matter. Her sudden and serious demand startles both the collector and Kiyori. As the collector stands with Samire and Kiyori, Ripley suddenly appears, calling out his name. She demands to know where he has been, explaining that she has been searching for him. With urgency in her voice, she tells him to come with her immediately, stating that something has happened in town that might be connected to the matter they've discussed. Her words strike a chord with the collector. He immediately understands the implication. Ripley, also known as Mako-san, has been actively gathering intelligence about his sister. A spark of hope ignites within him as he wonders if she has finally found a clue that could lead him to his sister. He is jolted back to the present, suddenly flustered as he remembers he was in the middle of spending the day with Kiyori. He turns to Kiyori, apologizing that he cannot see her home safely. Understanding the gravity of the situation, she tells him to go on, assuring him that it must be urgent and that she had a pleasant time with him. With a quick promise to take her up on her offer another day, the collector turns and runs off with Ripley and Samire. Kiyori watches them go, a thoughtful expression on her face. Now standing alone in the twilight, she admits to herself that it suddenly feels lonely. Meanwhile, Ripley leads the collector and Samire at a frantic pace through the city. The collector notes internally that he used all his available skills to rush there, but by the time they arrived at their destination, night had completely fallen. She guides them into the back alleys, a district the collector rarely visits. Stopping before a large, ornate building, Ripley announces, "We're here." The collector looks upon the building, identifying it as a casino, though it appears completely wrecked. A sign on the boarded-up door reads, "Temporarily closed." Ripley explains that, according to her small animal companions, someone destroyed the place last night. She demonstrates her source, listening intently to one of the creatures using her ultrasonic hearing LV.9 skill. He and Ripley stepped into the wrecked establishment, the scale of the destruction causing him to wonder aloud what kind of person could possibly inflict this much damage in a single night. From across the ruined hall, a man in a dealer's uniform called out, his voice weary. He warned them that the casino was closed and that not a single coin remained. The dealer approached, recognizing Ripley with a tired sigh. He commented on her swiftness in sniffing out the situation and then asked what had happened. He took a long drag from his cigarette, his expression grim as he delivered the unbelievable truth. All of the destruction was the work of a single woman. The dealer's memory painted a vivid picture. He recounted how she had appeared from nowhere the previous night, a striking woman in a crimson dress, her shining blonde hair hidden beneath a hood. The description, blonde hair and a red dress, struck the collector with the force of revelation. It was just like his sister. As he reeled from the shock, the dealer continued his tale, recalling the woman's words. She claimed to have lost to only one person and sought more strength to defeat them. The dealer, seeing a prime gambling opportunity, had told her this was the perfect place for a quest. In the flashback, the woman smiled, calling his declaration lovely. However, she immediately dismissed further conversation, stating there was no point in speaking if he was not stronger than her. The dealer had boasted that every employee there possessed high-level skills like psychology, precision movement, and oratory. In response, the woman simply raised a finger, cutting him off to propose a direct test of their respective skills. A strange, hexagonal field of energy suddenly enveloped the gambling table. The dealer cried out in shock, asking what the space was. The woman calmly stated that the activation conditions for her skill were met and began to propose the wager. She concluded with a stunning declaration. She would bet everything she owned. The dealer, flustered and overwhelmed, could only stammer that she must stake something of worthy value in return. The casino dealer concludes his story, gesturing to the wrecked interior where he, the collector, and Ripley stand. The air is heavy with the weight of his tale, the damaged bar serving as a testament to the sister's power. As the dealer's words hang in the air, Ripley internally analyzes the information. She pieces together the nature of the skill, a combination of persuasive speech to encourage dangerous wagers, coupled with some form of spatial manipulation. She voices her thoughts, remarking that the woman clearly possessed an unusual skill. The dealer confirms this, stating it's how every one of them lost to her. The collector agrees, his expression turning grim as he adds that something else now concerns him. His words trail off as a memory surfaces with startling clarity. He recalls his sister, as the saint, stating her desire to grow stronger. Her goal, she had said with the same fierce expression, was to defeat a certain person. Ripley observes him, murmuring his name as she recognizes the gravity of his realization. He quietly affirms her unspoken question. Ripley explains that her network of rats reported the woman's appearance, and suspecting it was the person he sought, she called for him immediately. She concedes that it might be a different person entirely, but the connection seems undeniable. He agrees, but his mind is elsewhere. The chaotic way his sister used her power is one thing, but the implication of her goal is far more troubling. A new, chilling question forms in his thoughts. If his sister is trying to defeat someone, does that mean someone is trying to defeat her? Carrying a large pack, the collector stands before the casino dealer, expressing a bad feeling about the situation. He asks if the dealer knows where the saint headed, but the man confirms he does not. He explains that she vanished before sunrise, leaving no trace, and that it will not be easy to follow her. He looks troubled by the news. The dealer, however, offers his assistance, promising to try and track the woman by setting his informants, his rats, in casinos across the various regions. The collector quietly thanks him for the help. The dealer then gives a stark warning, noting that, just as during the Saint incident, those involved in this affair are tied to hostility and aggression. He urges the collector to be careful. Agreeing, the collector clenches his fist with resolve and turns, walking away from the casino and into the streets of the town. As he moves through the unfamiliar town, he reflects that he has separated from Mako-san for now, and, since he was already here, decided to conduct some business. He quietly activates his appraisal skill, scanning the crowd for any unwanted skills he might acquire. He notes with some disappointment that there are hardly any unnecessary skills to be found here. Finding a bench, he sits to rest, contemplating his next move. He thinks it might be best to return to his base, but a persistent bad feeling he's had since seeing the casino gives him pause. The uneasy feeling, amplified by his level 30 instinct skill, is impossible to shake. Recalling Mako-san's warning and thinking of his friends, he decides he cannot risk involving them if something bad is about to happen to him. He consults a map, determining that an open plain lies beyond the main road. Believing it's better to distance himself from any town, he sets off, hoping the walk will calm his mind. Leaving the town far behind, he walks alone down a dirt path into the vast, open wilderness. He continues his solitary walk across the plains, when a flutter of white fabric near the ground catches his eye, the ruffled hem of a dress. He tries to dismiss it, but the uneasy feeling that has gripped him refuses to fade. He realizes this is the first time he has ever experienced such a strong and persistent premonition. His troubled thoughts are interrupted when he spots a figure in the distance. A lone woman stands beneath a tree, and he squints, wondering just what is happening. His eyes widen in sudden alarm. The figure is no longer distant. He freezes, startled, as the white dress now flutters directly in his path. He jerks his head up, his breath catching in his throat. Before him stands a woman with long, light hair and a familiar black bow tied at her back. Where there was empty space only a moment ago, a woman now stands on the plain. It is the saint. She is dressed not in her usual dark attire, but in a simple white sun dress and a wide-brimmed hat, her hair stirring gently in the breeze. His mind reels. His presence detection skill is active, yet it registers nothing. He can see her clearly, a woman, alone and unarmed, her face obscured by her hat, but to his senses, she is not there at all. He has completely failed to detect her. As he stands stunned, she breaks the silence, asking if he's been well and noting that it has been a while. He is taken aback by her casual words, which she delivers as if countless years have passed, not merely a short time. As the saint's cryptic words hung in the air, the scene before the collector dissolved. In its place, a new vision materialized. A young girl, her face framed by long, light hair under a wide-brimmed hat. A knowing, almost smug smile played on her lips. Her cheeks flushed as she looked forward and softly uttered a single phrase, "Big sister."